The main hero confronts a giant monster without any fear. He raises his hand as if just greeting, and the monster advances, roaring, yet he thinks this fight will bring him many experience points. The creature tries to strike him with all its might, but he stands firm, carefully watching every move. Suddenly the beast's roar echoed as it felt a blow from something unexpected, and the hero slid back after the hit, not taking his eyes off the three-eyed beast. The monster lunges forward with incredible force. The ground shakes with every step, but he quickly surveys the situation and realizes this battle will demand much more from him. Meanwhile, the girl in the background noticed something else and asked if he was about to level up. The monster momentarily froze in confusion, not understanding the boy's calm before the danger. The monster pounds the ground but still tries to get up and looks at the hero with anger. Meanwhile, the boy says that now winning is harder than when he was just a fish or a snake, recalling his transformation. The girl decides to start with the fish and with genuine interest asks what it is like to live like that. He answers simply, "It was not easy." She is impressed and delighted, saying that dealing with fish is really difficult. The protagonist wakes up in a strange place. He is surrounded by stones and underwater vegetation. Bubbles rise among them, and everything indicates that he is underwater. Still confused, he tries to understand why he is here and not at home. He strains to recall what happened, but his mind is blank. Looking around, he notices strange details nearby, and with fear realizes that something is very wrong with his body. Finally, he looked at his hand and understood that it was no longer a palm but something like a fin. Panic grips him as he notices that the rest of his body is also beginning to change. Within moments, his face and figure completely change. He sees himself as a fish. In despair, he tries to comprehend why this happened to him. Now, fully transformed into a fish, he desperately tries to restore his memories. He only remembers falling asleep as a human and nothing more, completely confused. He looks around and suddenly realizes this is not an ordinary river. Strange creatures swim nearby, some with forms he has never seen before. The landscape is as if from another world, impossible plants and animals, and I don't understand anything at all. He asks himself what is happening and exactly where he has ended up. He tries to calm down and swims to a more secluded corner. There he mentally reviews everything from beginning to end, not the slightest sign of land, and before he realized it, he had already turned into a fish. Everything starts to fit together too well to be a coincidence, so he assumes maybe he was reborn in another world, like in those rumors about reincarnation. He still cannot come to terms with the fact that his new life began exactly like this, tries to accept the new reality, and thinks that he would never have imagined such a turn. Feeling lonely, he decides to adapt to this world and reflects that if he had a choice, he would want to be reborn as a hero or some kind of super powerful protagonist, but now he must cope with what he has. Feeling a bit encouraged, he tells himself that he must become stronger, and nearby a small water creature seems to encourage him in response. Suddenly a voice spoke directly in his head. He shuddered and looked around, trying to find who said it. The voice explained that by feeding on other creatures, he gains experience points and can evolve. The presence calls itself the voice of the heavens, the one who explains, teaches skills, and gives advice, almost a mentor. The hero understands with relief that he is not completely alone and asks if this voice can see his status. A status window pops up before him. He is now a blue fish, still in the juvenile stage, a rare species but vulnerable and surrounded by natural predators, and the low numbers confirm that he is quite weak. When he asks what he will become in the future, the voice simply replies, "Blue fish," and its reaction clearly shows there will be no great transformation for him. He did not know whether to laugh or cry at this answer, and the voice explained that although they are weak now, with experience they will be able to evolve and become stronger, and the main hero already knew this. He tries to encourage himself by imagining that through reincarnation in another world he has some hidden advantage. He asks whether he will have an incredible evolution, or become a tuna, swordfish, or some powerful creature. But the voice answers no to each of his guesses, cruelly shattering hopes and making it clear that his path will not be as glamorous as he had pictured. The protagonist continued to guess increasingly absurd possibilities of evolution: piranha, coelacanth, alligator, gar, even a powerful shark, but the voice rejected them all without hesitation. In despair, he insists and even imagines a hybrid resembling a mermaid, but the voice rejects this idea, saying that it makes no biological sense, and tired, he asks that they at least reveal what the final evolution will be. When he was already preparing to hear the truth, the voice finally agreed to speak. It began to reveal the final evolution and left the hero in burning anticipation. The answer appears. Eventually, he will be able to transform into a dragon. The little fish is completely shocked, does not believe what he heard, and asks the voice to repeat. The thought that from a weak little fish he can grow into a dragon throws him into pure delight. In his imagination emerges the image of a huge, frightening dragon, and the very thought that such power is available even to a weak fish excites him. He celebrates, believing that he finally has a great destiny, and the voice notices that he got more than it seemed, although it admits that his enthusiasm is starting to scare it. Enthralled by the thought of becoming a dragon, he imagines breathing fire and even flying through the sky, and excitement takes over. He decides that he must evolve as quickly as possible. Having set the goal, he prepares to move forward, but first asks the voice to suggest how to climb the mountain to continue the path. This shows that despite the excitement, he still has a long way to go. He obediently opens his mouth at the voice's command, not understanding why, and a moment later the same voice orders him to close it. Suddenly, a message appeared. He gained experience, and the W level jumped from 1 to 2. Confused, he says he doesn't need anything, but the voice hoarsely explains he already ate something. Not noticing it looking around, he noticed that he found himself in a place where it is easy to catch small creatures, saw them swimming around, and realized that unnoticed he is absorbing plankton. The voice confirmed that such prey gives experience, which is why his level rose so quickly, and he thought that if he doesn't even feel himself eating, then this is a great way to easily gain experience. So the first dish in his new life turned out to be plankton, and he honestly admits that surprisingly it is even tasty. When his W level reached the maximum, the voice announced that he can now evolve, and delighted, he agreed without hesitation. A glow flared around, the form changed, but the result was simple. He was still a blue fish, only a little bigger. Checking his status, he sees that almost nothing has changed except for this. However, he expected this anyway and tries not to be disappointed. After an hour of monotonous repetition, he decided to continue leveling up. He ate plankton, trying to move up the mountain. He understands that almost nothing has changed, and irritation overwhelms him. Suddenly, a school of fish rushes around him as if something scared them. This draws his attention and makes him realize that something unexpected is happening nearby. He asks the voice what kind of fish are these and can they be eaten, and the voice explains that these are small schooling fish, seemingly harmless, but they know how to use bait to hunt bigger prey. Stunned, he realizes that perhaps he is not the predator here. The target behaves suspiciously. As soon as one of them approaches, the fish tries to swim away. But one of the small ones dashed forward at a crazy speed and hit him directly, pushing him against a rock. Pain strikes suddenly, and he realizes the blow was so powerful that even the rock behind bears a scratch. Frightened, he quickly hides in a burrow, realizing that those fish were not joking and that he was the target from the very beginning. Surrounded by several aggressive little fish, he understands that he is truly in trouble. Each of them approaches with that predatory look, ready to attack again. Trapped between the rock and the school, he falls into despair and tries to think of a way out before it becomes too late. Cornard realizes this is almost a death sentence. The voice persistently warns of danger, but he loses patience. He already knows well how bad everything is. Having no other choice, he gathers all his courage and rushes out of hiding, shouting, trying to escape the inevitable attack. He runs with all his might, leaving the aggressive fish behind. After a few minutes, he finds shelter among the aquatic plants and finally sighs with relief. He does not understand how these tiny fish can be so strong and considers it unfair. The voice explains that in reality they are weak but have special abilities that make them dangerous. This ignites his curiosity about the abilities and how they work in this world. The voice explains, those tiny fish use an ability that hardens and sharpens their fins, turning them into blades. That is why the strike hurts so much. And he realizes, even weak creatures with the right abilities can win. Full of curiosity, he asks what incredible abilities he himself possesses. The voice names two: a huge mouth that allows swallowing prey of his size, and the ability to shine with scales to blind the enemy. When he heard this, he was outraged. Such abilities are ridiculously weak for someone who dreams of becoming a dragon. Still complaining about his skills, he realized too late that the small fish had found him again. The voice warned that even fleeing would change nothing. They quickly surrounded the place and he felt danger approaching. Having no choice, he decided to fully trust the voice and flee from here as fast as possible, not even knowing if it would save his skin. Again cornered, he decides for the first time to trust his own strength and activates his lumen essence, releasing a dazzling glow that explodes around like a flash. The enemy fish are stunned for a moment and scatter because they cannot see well. For the first time, his ability really worked, and much better than he expected. The enemy fish retreated, complaining of pain in their eyes, and he felt dizzy from the brightness. Yet despite this, he noticed something strange. The dizziness disappeared, and the voice confirmed that he gained new resilience. Through his own attack, as if killing two birds with one stone, he wounded the enemies and became more enduring himself, and although he complains about the method, he admits that it worked much better than expected. While the enemies are still stunned, the voice whispers to take the chance and swallow one of them. He hesitates. It is strange to eat another such big fish, but the need is louder and he tries to bite. He realized it was hard to tear off pieces until the voice suggested using the skill Big Mouth, which allows biting off more, and gradually he manages to eat the prey. He feels that with each attempt he becomes a little stronger. He looks at another fallen fish and wonders if he can eat two at once. The voice encourages him to try this skill. As soon as he activates Big Mouth, his jaw opens ridiculously and absurdly wide. Far beyond the limits of normal, he is stunned by the size of his mouth but quickly realizes that now he can effortlessly devour whole prey. He tests the skill to the limit and immediately swallows several fish, completely amazed by his own strength. What seemed useless now impresses absurd strength for a human of his size. The voice explains that skills exist precisely to break the natural rules of the world and allow doing what is biologically impossible. That bright light he emitted, or the giant mouth that could not exist in an ordinary fish, and he begins to understand that even being weak, he can use these skills to truly survive and grow. Having eaten several fish, he reached the maximum level and evolution became available again. He cannot believe he survived the attacks and still managed to defeat the enemies. As soon as he evolves, he turns into a small adult blue fish. His stats sharply increase and he also acquires the skill part Reinforcement Sharpness, the very one used by enemies. Now, having understood the skill system much better, he asks the voice with a sparkle in his eyes to explain even more, fascinated by his newly gained progress. The voice spoke, explaining the skill system in detail, as if conducting a formal lesson. He says, in this world all creatures have their abilities. And these abilities are capable of incredible feats, from absurd physical strength to elemental manipulation. There are two types: some grant power passively and constantly, while others can be activated to cause specific effects, such as creating flames or further enhancing strength. The main character, becoming stronger and even more curious, feels. Finally, he begins to understand how this world is arranged and how to turn it to his advantage, and the voice continues to explain, saying that his skills, such as Big Mouth and Luminous skills, are active abilities and resistances are gained through personal experience. There are two main ways to expand their set: evolve or change race and gain new skills, or acquire resistances by going through certain situations, like him, when his own light made him dizzy and he gained resistance to dizziness. He begins to realize that any event, even a coincidence, can turn into power for the future. He notices that after defeating Mala and Go, he gained the ability to make parts of his body sharp. He decides to test it, activating Partial Enhancement Sharpness. His fins lit up like blades. He rushes forward with a single swift strike and, to his surprise, easily cuts the stone in half. The power of this ability shocks him. It is much stronger than he imagined. Standing by the split stone, he is thrilled by how sharp this ability really is, just like the attack of that fish that almost killed him, and with excitement says that evolution brings only advantages. The voice finishes the beginner's lesson and says that now they will move on to practice, and the main character, eager like a devoted student, asks to continue, adjusts the concentration bandage, and is ready to keep learning to become even stronger. Out of nowhere among the rocks crawled a huge slimy creature, its body twisting with strange and threatening movements. The main character freezes, seeing the sinister eyes and sharp jaws of this creature. The creature twists and slowly moves forward as if studying its prey. Panic envelops him. He cannot understand what he is looking at. When the monstrous head rises, he finally screams. Without a doubt, it is a living nightmare, and it flies straight at him. The fish goes into shock, feeling its body enveloped by a viscous creature. A voice from the sky says that this monster softens the victim's skin with strong acid before eating it. He feels the texture melting and falls into despair, struggling to break free, cursing and kicking. But the monster still does not let go. It pulls him as if he were made of rubber, and he continues to struggle for freedom with all his might. The fish is tense, trying to understand where that monster came from, but soon notices something familiar in it. The beast devours the body of Mala and Go, whom it had defeated earlier. A voice from the sky says that the creature was attracted by the smell of Mala and Go's remains. The fish, frightened, realizes that the monster came because of its last victory, and now something much more terrifying threatens it. The monster tries to swallow the fish as easily as it swallowed Mala and Go, and it frantically struggles and kicks to break free. Then it activates its skills Glow and Sharp Slash. Nothing, it seems, affects the creature that tightens more and more. And yet he does not retreat, cutting the air around him, trying to break free before he is completely engulfed. The monster's acid crushes and burns the fish. He feels his scales melting, life dropping almost to zero in despair. He complains that he cannot break free and realizes he is one step from death. The voice explained that skills can be combined, only hears about this now because of the previous pause, and even writhing in pain and crushed, he rages that he didn't learn about it earlier while the monster still squeezes his body. Fish panics and asks the voice to find a solution faster, and the voice advises connecting Big Mouth with Shark Part. And without time to think, he instantly agrees. A synthesis occurs, a new skill, Fang Jaw Hidden, appears, and amazed he realizes that this is like an evolution of Big Mouth, even in the one where it is rubbed and crushed, and he pins all hopes on the new technique. Hoping that this will be enough to save him, the monster tries to swallow the fish whole. It squeezes tighter and tighter, but before it becomes too late, the fish activates its new skill. He opens his transformed maw, now full of sharp fangs, and bites down with all his might, but the maw with fangs tears the flesh of the predator. Tearing off chunks, the monster recoils in shock, unable to withstand the sudden attack, while the fish activates the reinforced jaw skill, tears a huge piece from the predator, and forcefully hurls it back. Seizing the moment, he broke free and fell to the ground, gasping and realizing how close he was to death. The water will burn his wounds, but he is alive, and the monster writhes in the background from severe injuries. Fang Jia's strike cuts the predator with a giant wound and sweeps it all the way to the water's edge. The main hero breaks free at the moment of the strike and falls to the ground. He exhaled with relief when he realized he had torn off that piece. While the wounded monster rushes on, he looks at his melted scales and thinks that the water will burn them when it touches. Though barely visible, he is not dead. The fish falls to the ground powerless. He understands that he has lost too much blood to move further. A voice warns him that in this state he won't last long. The only chance to restore energy is to consume the predator he killed earlier. Though reluctant, he understands there is no time. The body is failing and a timer appears, counting down his last moments. Not wanting to die here, he gathers his last crumbs of strength and begins to crawl toward the prey. The timer relentlessly falls and he, gasping, drags the wounded body across the ground. In desperation to survive, he gathers his last strength and activates his skills, biting into the dead enemy's body. Though he falters and nearly loses consciousness, he knows this is the only way to restore energy before time runs out. Even when his mouth burns and the edge melts from acid, he continues to bite, ignoring the pain. Every torn piece hurts but also returns some strength to his weakened body. When the acid's effect finally ended, the voice warned that now he can truly recover. Exhausted but alive, he realized he managed to turn the situation around at the last moment, survived, though very wounded. But it was better than dying there, and finally he recovered, sighing with relief that he almost perished. The voice confirmed he had already regained more than half of his life and the acute danger had receded. Even after evolution, the body has hardly changed, but he notices an important thing: his wounds heal much faster than before. Looking at the mangled body of the defeated monster, he finally realizes how truly dangerous that creature was, and suddenly the thought occurs: if he eats the remains of the river eel, he can evolve once more. Having healed, he begins to wonder, will growing up be the end of his growth? The doubt flashed for a moment, but he quickly pulled himself together. If he can transform into a dragon, this cannot be the limit. While enjoying what was left of the prey, he was again fired up with anticipation, imagining even more absurd evolutions in the future. For him, adulthood is just another step, not the end. Now Calmer is pondering what the next step in his own evolution will be. A voice says that from now on he can choose a new evolutionary path and become a different species. Before him appear two silhouetted figures, options with completely different routes of the future, and he gazes at these forms with curiosity, feeling that this choice will determine the course of his new life. He jumped for joy upon seeing that he could finally change his race. The thought of breaking out of fishy limits thrilled him wildly. He imagined countless different possibilities, but this excitement lasted very briefly. The voice says that now, besides fish, there is only one option, and when he realizes this, it becomes clear to him the path is practically decided, and this choice may bring him even closer to transforming into something like a dragon. He imagines the strangest dragons, feline, frog-like, even wolfish, and then changes his mind. He realizes, if following the logic of that world, evolution into a river eel would probably lead to something even stranger, say, a slimy dragon, and just the thought of this clearly unsettles him. He convinces himself that this is not the dragon he wants to become, tries to calm down, and repeats to himself that there is still another path. Even fearing, he decides to move forward, accepting that the next transformation will change everything. Evolution begins painfully. His body contracts and twists with force. The transformation tears and rebuilds everything from scratch, causing such hellish pain that he was completely unprepared. Yet he still holds on, does not give up in the middle of the transformation. While his body is being recreated, he screams and resists until the very end. I am determined not to lose this chance, no matter what this new form becomes. Finally, the transformation was completed, and he opened his eyes. He felt that his body had become significantly larger and stronger than before. It was not just growth, but a true species exchange. Looking at the new body, he realizes that until now everything was just the evolution of the blue fish. Now everything is different. The voice confirms that he has taken an important step and is gradually approaching the path that leads to the dragon. The voice shows the evolutionary path, full of branches, and explains that changing race is the key to becoming stronger. Each choice leads to a different creature, revealing unexpected routes. The hero watches everything with shining eyes and finally understands the process. This is how someone starts as a fish and step by step can reach the dragon. He checked his status after the race change and was impressed to see how much new information appeared there. Now he is a rainbus. He has gained several additional skills and resistances that he did not have before. At the same time, he is a rainbus and he has gained several additional skills and resistances that he did not have before. At the same time, he is a rainbus and he has gained several additional skills and resistances that he did not have before. At the same time, he is a rainbus and he has gained several additional skills and resistances that he did not have before. At the same time, he is a rainbus and he has gained several additional skills and resistances that he did not have before. At the same time, he is a rainbus and he has gained several additional skills and resistances that he did not have before. At the same time, he is a rainbus and he has gained several additional skills and resistances that he did not have before. At the same time, he is a rainbus and he has gained several additional skills and resistances that he did not have before. At the same time, he is a rainbus and he has gained several additional skills and resistances that he did not have before. At the same time, he is a rainbus and he has gained several additional skills that he did not have before. At the same time, he is a rainbus and he has gained several additional skills that he did not have before. At the same time, he is a rainbus and he has gained several additional skills that he did not have before. At the same time, he is a rainbus and he has gained several additional skills that he did not have before. At the same time, he is a rainbus and he has gained several additional skills that he did not have before. At the same time, he is a rainbus and he has gained several additional skills that he did not have before. At the same time, he is a rainbus and he has gained several additional skills that he did not have before. At the same time, he is a rainbus and he has gained several additional skills that he did not have before. Sincerely thank you for your time. See you in the next video. He notices that some numbers have sharply dropped. The voice explains that this is normal when changing race. The main stats weaken, but the potential and options grows. He understands that this is an exchange not for instant power, but for opening much broader paths in the future. After reviewing the data, he finally better understood what the evolution led to. The race change pushed all previous evolutions to the maximum limit, turning everything into rainbus LMAX. The voice explains that after changing race, evolution becomes much harder and requires significantly more experience. But now his parameters exceed any ordinary evolution. He quickly analyzes the status and notices shockingly high attack, all due to the corrective effect associated with the skill Fang. He also discovers that the higher his mastery, the more precisely he controls water. Reviewing new skills, he notices that several of them are aimed at strengthening the body. Some add physical endurance, others make it even stronger during rain. Satisfied, he finishes the review, understanding that this form is created for long-term growth, not for instant power. He tests a new ability and sees how water responds to his command like real magic. A stream appears, twists, and takes shape according to his thoughts, proving that now he can freely control currents. Surprised and delighted, he realizes that this is his debut in true magic. Activating the water control technique, he feels power flowing from his body and understands. From now on, his chances in battle and survival have significantly increased. He tries to apply this skill, but it turned out weak and clumsy. The water scattered without form, not at all as he imagined. Realizing the mistake, he understood that any amount of water is not enough. A larger volume is needed, and changing the plan, he created a more stable whirlpool, finally seeing the water spin as it should. The hero tries his new magic controlling water for the first time. At first, everything is weak and unimpressive, so realizing that for a real effect a pond or a large pool is needed, he will try again. This This time a vortex rises, revealing the true power of their magic. The fish is truly moved. One of its childhood dreams has come true, although it remembers little and is not very strong yet. Still excited, it constantly uses the skill, burning mana without thinking. When energy is at the limit, the body suddenly stiffens and barely moves. A voice warns, if all MP are lost, paralysis will occur, and this clearly shows that too much strain will have a price. Mana is completely exhausted. The fish panics. The body does not obey, skills do not work, and the voice warns that now an attack or prayer will speed up recovery. But until it fully heals, the fish will not be able to move. Bound to helplessness, it can only wait. An hour passes and nothing happens. No enemies, the area is completely quiet, left alone and untouched. Having nothing else to do, the fish thoughtfully considers its situation and asks the voice of the heavens to tell more, because it understands that it has not yet fully grasped the signs of its new form, Rainbus. Swimming downstream, it recalls thinking that this area was invincible, but it still remained alive. The voice explains that rainbus are heavily hunted, especially on rainy days, because their numbers can disrupt the ecosystem, so they were called conqueror fish. Hearing this, the fish cannot help but feel as if the system really has a grudge against it, but accepts the explanation and continues to swim, knowing that there is still life downstream. The voice says that adult blue fish are rare creatures that have reached their limit. They have rough scales and incredibly hard bodies. There is a rumor that eating them grants eternal life, but the voice clearly refutes this as a lie. The fish asks about these traits and learns that adult blue fish are no longer simple prey. Having turned into targets meant for conquest, it cannot bear this. It remembers that it was once human. The fish feels if people believe the rumor about eternal life, they will mercilessly hunt it, and this very thought tells it one clear thing: people are dangerous. When night falls, the little fish decides to rest in the water grass thickets and sighs with relief. The struggle has finally subsided. Settled down and believed that sleep would help its body recover. By morning, it wakes noticeably better. It can move again without pain. Having gained strength, it shakes off drowsiness from its head and pulls itself together, ready to go on and survive another day. The fish suddenly notices strange patterns, as if carved directly into the water. It grabbed a stone and instantly understood it was Japanese. This worries it. Is there anyone else in this world Japanese besides itself? Looking around, it notices several more marked stones and realizes that someone had been here before. The thought that they might already be dead or eaten troubles it, but there are no other traces, so it can only keep going. When no one was nearby, the fish decided to call out to try its luck. It called about the Japanese inscriptions carved into the rock, hoping someone would respond. The voice from the sky answered that no one else had come yet and that the time had not come. Hearing this, the fish realized that it still does not know when or if anyone will ever come. Time quietly drags on. The little fish calls without stopping and checks again and again. Hours pass without an answer. The silence becomes heavy, but she still decides not to give up and whispers to herself that she will talk to him every hour. Several hours passed and the little fish began to fuss and worry. She felt how much time had passed and asked herself if anyone would ever answer. The little fish finally meets another fish. Seeing that the inscription on the stones is in Japanese, she realizes she is not alone, and the other little fish admits that she was the one who left that inscription. Enthralled and a little moved by finally meeting someone, for the first time since arriving in this world, the main fish suddenly realizes that there is someone else here similar to him. The two fish sincerely begin to talk, and one of them calms the other, saying that he definitely knows what it is like to feel. The darker little fish admits that at first she was terribly scared, confused by becoming a fish with a strange voice in her head, and she kept all that fear inside. He tells that he was alone for a whole month, was afraid all the time, and this world is completely different from the one he knew. What he hears is covered by silence, heavy, but with relief because he is finally not alone. The lighter little fish asks if the other little fish remembers anything from her previous life, and the darker little fish sighs, admits that she was unlucky, and begins to tell. He recalls how at 17 he worked as an intelligence agent. During one mission he made a mistake, was captured, and everything went awry. In the end he was tortured to death. The revelation shocks the listener, and the mood suddenly becomes heavy and gloomy. The darker little fish says that the past is already behind and the other should not worry about it, but still admits that despite everything he lived a full life. The lighter little fish asked about the outside world and why the darker one wants to know about it so much. The darker one replied that the world outside is frightening, and that is why it is important to understand it, and also promised that if given some time she would explain how that world works. While they talk, he again returns in his thoughts to his past and intelligence, how dangerous it was to live then, how violence constantly lurked nearby, and this memory now defines how he views survival in this new world. The lighter fish suggests joining forces and venturing into the outside world together, confessing that she is too scared to face monsters alone, and believes that with the help of other fish they will survive and become friends. For a moment, it feels like the perfect combination, and it seems that becoming friends is already decided. But the darker fish suddenly refuses. He apologizes and clearly rejects the offer, leaving the lighter fish stunned and confused. The unexpected refusal shatters the hopeful mood. He imagines the outside world as a place filled with dangerous monsters, and is sure that survival is only possible by banding together and fighting side by side. But fear is stronger than hope, and he honestly admits, because of his past, he does not want to leave here. The other fish understands and respects his choice, accepting the refusal without pressure. After that, the first fish decides to share what she has already learned, and begins to tell about the world from her limited experience instead of venturing outside. They whispered quietly in the middle of the river and felt how empty it became around. The darker fish explains that just a few days ago this place teemed with creatures, but all suddenly disappeared. He saw how everything simultaneously moved against the current as if something was leading them. The lighter fish sighed with relief that she was not attacked, but a feeling of anxiety remained. Mass movement always foretells trouble. They reach a rocky area and realize this is a natural shelter. The lighter fish says that it was here once she survived after an attack by a huge stone monster, hiding in crevices and avoiding serious injuries. The darker fish looks stunned, cannot believe that you yourself encountered such danger, and asks if you were not afraid. The lighter fish admits that she was afraid. He says that thoughts about his latest evolution push him forward. He believes that remaining weak is to condemn oneself to being a constant target, and that becoming stronger is the only way to survive in this world, and they imagine what true strength might be and are impressed by all these possibilities. Their thoughts were filled with visions of dragons and legendary beasts, each stronger than the previous one. The darker fish excitedly screams with delight, while the lighter one calmly counts mythical creatures that could exist at the pinnacle of evolution. At that moment, the idea of the ultimate form ceases to be a vague dream and becomes a real, almost attainable goal. They came across an unexpected option, a turtle. One immediately beamed with joy and declared it his, while the other reacted with mixed feelings. They doubt whether this path truly fits their idea of absolute power. Excitement and doubts clash, and the idea is dismissed half-jokingly. Yet curiosity prevails, and they decide to check the status to find out where this choice really leads. They check the new status and freeze. The results are shocking. The form after evolution has absurdly high defense, powerful regeneration, and earthly abilities that clearly favor survival over attack. One proudly boasts that his defense is far beyond the usual, while the other understands this power was not given easily. It took several evolutions, so the turtle's path is no joke. This moment leaves a clear conclusion. Evolution is not flashy, but insanely strong, and only because of this it frightens. The enemy reveals the true form, turning into a living fortress. His armor deflects blows, and he himself heals and stands firm without a single scratch. Seeing this, the fish realizes how dangerous the situation is. The defense is so impenetrable that even a dragon is unlikely to break through it. And for the first time, escape seems like the only real way out, encouraged by the words he hears. The fish begins to believe that escape is really possible, and that praise gives him at least some confidence. At the same time, the other fish feels awkward and embarrassed, realizing that perhaps she praised him too easily. But before they manage to calm down, something bangs nearby, and their attention instantly returns to the danger. Suddenly, they hear sharp blows hitting the rock ahead. Needles dig deep into the rock. The white fish freezes, puzzled, while the other notices something strange in this scene. Squinting, they notice that one needle was stuck in the stone and did not harm it, as if it missed the target. This small detail clearly indicates that someone nearby is watching them, and that attack was not accidental at all. They instantly understand what is happening. Spiny river creatures are swimming downstream in a group and shooting sharp needles, driving prey out of hiding places. That's why the sudden attack happened and needles got stuck in the stones, and two fish realized that these creatures were to blame. Trying not to attract attention, they hide behind a stone and cautiously move upstream, copying that strange behavior they saw earlier. But one of the attackers notices that something is wrong while most of the group moves on. A pair of eyes freezes on them and understands. Prey is trying to escape. Although the creature shot a needle directly at them, Whitefish reacted instantly, rushed forward, and covered the attack with his own body. He orders his friend to hide behind the stones. He himself puts himself under the blow. The needle pierces him, leaving a visible hole, but he does not lose consciousness and stands. Shocked and frightened, the other fish shouted to him, realizing that he had without hesitation stood up to defend. The group understood that spiny river monsters attack by shooting needles downstream. When one of them fired a direct shot, the white fish rushed to block it and took the hit himself. Even wounded, she remained calm and pushed others to hide behind the stones. As dusk approached, he noticed that the enemy slowed down and realized only one remained nearby. Seizing the moment and calculating the distance, he dashed straight at him, dodging needles and closing the gap, and at close range the monster's attack became useless. The fight turned in his favor. The hero rushed straight at the pufferfish while it was shooting its needles. He maneuvers between the shots, barely dodging them and closing the distance. A sudden counterattack catches the enemy by surprise and forces him to panic under pressure, and even when the fight turns chaotic, he does not retreat, acts quickly, and gains confidence in real combat. The pufferfish launches another needle attack, showering the space with flying spikes. The main hero dodges at the last moment, but movement slows down. Pain spreads throughout the body. One spike almost pierces his head and drives him into a narrow crevice between the stones, preventing normal movement. And with fewer options, he realizes a single mistake and he will get stuck here and die on the spot. Pufferfish shoots needles again, but the blue fish jumps ahead and the blue fish takes the blow on itself. The needle cracks against its hardened body and does almost no harm. Even pushed back, it stands firm and does not let the pufferfish get close. Realizing it will withstand these attacks and calming its companion that it is fine while the spiny attacks continue, and the white fish pushes itself beyond the possible to block and dodge, even when the body barely obeys. He understands that he cannot run forever, but still stands between the enemy and the companion, taking the blows on himself. The dark fish sharply responds, irritated and embarrassed, yet admits rescue gave him confidence when he was at the bottom. Even if his final evolution turns out to be modest, it no longer matters. The main thing is that he stopped running and decided to face everything head-on. The dark fish finally spoke. Seeing his friend wounded and still moving forward broke his patience. He admits that he ran away out of fear, hid instead of acting, and hates that version of himself. Even if his future will be slow and purely defensive, he no longer wants to live watching from the sidelines. He decisively faces danger head-on and asks for help. The white fish agrees and they move forward together. Move together, the dark fish leads forward and tells the other to stay close, while the white fish rushes straight ahead to clear the way. The enemy shoots again, but the dark fish blocks and pushes forward, taking the blows right in the forehead. Seeing his wounded partner, the white fish flares with rage and launches a counterattack, protecting him. For the first time, they fight together instead of running, and trusting each other, they turn the tide of the battle. The fish rushed forward without hesitation, spinning and hitting the enemy with all its might. The blow breaks through the opponent's defense, knocking him back. The attack finally breaks this stalemate. The fish tries water magic for the first time, attempts to tame the current, but at first nothing works. Realizing it needs a real body of water, it changes approach and finally creates a real whirlpool. Although the spell is still fragile and unstable, it is an undeniable success. For the first time after rebirth, it feels that magic is now part of its life, and having learned to use it properly, it will be able to become stronger. Fish finally truly tests its magic. At first, controlling water is clumsy and weak, barely forming a small breeze, but after thinking it over, it realizes that for real work it needs more water. Using the river, it creates a whirlpool of water and skillfully directs the flow, proving that now it can use magic on its own. The result is not perfect yet, but it is clear progress, and for the first time it truly feels confident that this new power will matter in the future. Two little fish decide to swim upstream to hunt and evolve, realizing that its current controlled everything around them. As they moved forward together, suddenly a huge, terrifying creature appeared right ahead and blocked the way, and faced with an unknown threat lurking upstream, their journey instantly turned into a serious survival test. Two creatures talk during training on the mountain, and suddenly one of them realizes it is ready to transform, although the number at 8 is the same as before. They believe that tough training and a special skill speed up everything when the moment comes. It apologizes to the other and says it will evolve first. Immediately its body reacts and evolution begins. After evolution, she was identified as Orin, a dangerous fish that must be destroyed if it gets out of control. It gains a bunch of new skills and immediately starts thinking about how to use them properly. But instead of rushing, Orin decides to review each skill and later think about their combination. It decided to bet on defense first, step by step training the body and strengthening. Although these abilities are incredibly powerful, it understands that each can be used only once, so it acts carefully and patiently. After synthesizing skills, Orin notices that its overall stats have also increased. Suddenly, a new ability activates that allows its strength and endurance to remain constantly enhanced, and this amazes it. The conditions for this are so simple. Satisfied with the result, Orin suddenly feels something strange nearby. Then it begins to name its inner voice and realizes that this voice is the same in its brother. They both understand that they transform together, and from this thought Orin becomes truly happy. A small fish suddenly realizes that it too can evolve and gratefully thanks everything around. Light descends from above, shocking others, and this confirms that now evolution is possible for it as well. Orin remains cautious. He notices signs and decides to be careful, while the younger one proudly tells Orin that he himself can also develop. Since there are two possible paths, it asks Orin to look and help decide before choosing. They examined both evolution options and understood. Both are strong forms. One is a stone-type fish with hard scales, heavy weight, and is excellent as material for weapons. The other is as if from the very foundation of the rock. It stands still and lures with scent to annihilate everything around, making it an extremely dangerous target. After thinking, they agree that the bedrock type is actually not suitable for their situation, especially considering how they move and use incense. So in the end, they lean towards the rockfish evolution as a more practical and safer choice. They realize that the furious current rushing downstream explains the strange movements of fish in the river, and with this, everything became clear and urgent. To protect their future, they decided to defeat the stonefish and return home. Without hesitating for a second, Orin's brother makes his choice and begins to transform into a stonefish, preparing for the upcoming battle. After evolution, Orin's brother becomes Raisin, a stone perch. His new form grants the ability to shoot his own scales as projectiles, with the scales quickly regrowing. Checking his stats, they immediately noticed. Defense is incredibly high compared to attack. Orin noted that excessive focus on defense usually lowers other characteristics, and now everyone is troubled by the question of how far such evolution can go. Encouraged, Raisin finally decided to test skill synthesis and combine his scale shooting with a strengthening effect. Thank you very much. He invents a new attack. Before throwing scales, he sharpens and enhances them, and as soon as he tries, the result is immediately visible. Scales shoot out rapidly and strike much harder, proving that the new skill works exactly as it should, providing a reliable combat option. The attack crashes into the stone, smashing it with repeated blows and leaving both stunned. It is clearly much stronger than anything they have seen in the river so far, and seeing the result, they discuss it. Raisin agrees to lead the fight forward, leaving cover in the rear to his brother, but they immediately notice this skill consumes a lot of energy and does not suit Orin's style at all, although its raw power is impressive. After 3 days, they move upstream to prepare for the boss fight, and Orin advises eating the fish left in the river to weaken the enemy and prepare. But as soon as they advance further, they are stunned by how the place is filled with fish and monsters. The place is oppressive. One of them feels uneasy, while the other stands calmly, impressed by how tense the situation has become. They notice that all the fish are swimming in one direction, as if led by strange smoke drifting through the water. It looks unnatural, and more creatures appear as if from nowhere. The guys check on Orin, worried about the smoke, but Orin says that it seems the smoke does not affect them and realizes that the smell comes from the rockfish. They decide to go with the current, knowing it will lead them straight to the target. As they move forward, the smoke thickens and it becomes very clear they are already close. Orin says the source must be nearby. Suddenly, they notice something is wrong. What seemed like a stone is emitting smoke, and Orin realizes it is not a stone at all. The target was right in front of them, hiding in plain sight. Suddenly, the fake stone turned out to be a huge monster. Opening its jaws, it poured smoke around. Its size and mere presence overwhelm everything around, clearly showing how dangerous it is. Orin and Raisin watch intently as it moves, and realizing it is a solid rock, Orin does not panic but calmly considers what to do. And they ask themselves, will they be able to defeat him on their own? Not whether they will be allowed to fight, but whether they truly have enough strength to win. Raisin decides to act and fires from a stone rifle at the surrounding stones, trying to break apart the soil compressing the bedrock. Orin picks up the plan, believing that this might give them a real chance to win. The stones collapse and bury the monster, depriving it of the ability to move, and Raisin, seeing the result, joyfully celebrates, confident that the plan worked and they successfully sealed the cliff in place. The buried monster suddenly breaks free from the stones, bursting out with a fierce roar. The collapse only enraged it, and its giant jaws snap open sharply, debris flying everywhere. Orin and Raisin are stunned by what they see, realizing that their plan did not stop it at all. The monster made of bedrock turned out to be much stronger than they expected and now fully unleashed. In response, it launches a powerful attack, firing lightning-fast stone missiles. The projectiles explode on impact, generating powerful shockwaves that throw Raisin and Orin into desperate turmoil, and Orin recognizes the attack as a high-level skill from bedrock, something like the rock gun technique, but on a much more dangerous scale. They realize that the fight will be much harder than they thought. Bedrock relentlessly attacks, and Orin, realizing they are outmatched, suggests retreating and regrouping. Raisin, determined, rushed forward despite the danger. Orin, worried for his safety, called out to him, but Raisin remained focused and pressed forward persistently. Bedrock lunged forward, grabbed Raisin with its jaws, and with one brutal motion swallowed him. He watches in shock as Raisin is dragged down, completely crushed by the monster's attack. Orin tries in vain to break through Bedrock's thick skin. It's almost impossible. He can't bite through it and realizes things are bad. He resolutely refuses to give up on Raisin, even if it costs him his life. Despite incredible difficulties, Orin believes they can still find a way to help. Because Raisin has strong protection, this gives them a little time before everything gets worse. Orin struggles in Bedrock's grip and realizes that his current skills are insufficient to break through that defense. Even biting with full force, it barely works. It is clear how strong the enemy really is. As the pressure builds, Orin understands he has only one way out: to create new skills and use them again, risking everything in a last attempt to turn the tide of the battle. Orin listens to the voice guiding him and swiftly combines his biting techniques. The synthesis is complete. A new hardened jaw appears, his strength reinforced. It clenches again, finally ready to break through Bedrock's defense and reverse the course of the fight. Orin releases the newly synthesized skill and bites with all his might. This time, his jaws break through Bedrock's hardened defense. Seeing the damage, Orin moves forward without hesitation, determined to finish the fight and not give up. Orin activates his new ability and bites again. This time, his jaws cut straight through Bedrock's hardened scales. Realizing the defense is breached, Orin does not retreat and continues to attack, fully committed to victory. His strike hits cleanly, breaking the stone scales and exposing a weak spot. The monster froze in shock, realizing that this damage was not from some high skill. Seeing this, Orin felt Bedrock's endurance falling, the defense no longer absolute, and the fight finally turning in his favor, so he does not stop and tears deeper into Bedrock's exposed body. Stone fragments scatter as the monster fights back, turning the clash into a brutal test of endurance. No one retreats, and the fight comes down to a direct struggle who will fall first. Finally, the stone massif collapses, its gigantic body torn and bleeding on the riverbed. The danger has passed. Orin retreats exhausted and covered in wounds and realizes he survived only thanks to his hardened jaws. The fight is won, but barely. Raisin rushes back, apologizing for making Orin worry. Orin sharply cuts him off, irritated and shocked, saying he almost died after swallowing him whole. Calmed down, they laughed about how tough the rock turned out to be and how recklessly the fight unfolded. And when the danger passed, they noticed the scent still smoldering. One fish remained, and Raisin admitted he became impatient when Orin couldn't eat that rock. Raisin asks how they defeated Bedrock, and Orin explains that he created a new skill. By increasing the bite strength, his attack instantly grew, and they realized that Orin's jaws are so strong they can tear even that hard body. Hearing this, Raisin finally understands why Orin handles such a tough enemy. After the fight, they checked the results and were shocked. Bedrock gave an incredible amount of experience. Although they ate only a part, Orin realized that his growth reached the maximum and he can evolve again. Looking at the evolution options, they were immediately captivated by the one leading to a rare blue fish. It is considered a true antique rarity due to its slow movements and tender meat. Orin jumps at the thought that he might one day step onto land, but suddenly notices something wrong with Raisin. He seems to be reacting to his evolutionary choices. Orin feels a chill in his chest. If he evolves now, it might tear him away from Raisin. This thought shakes him, and he makes it clear, after everything they have been through together, he will not leave his brother. Understanding that there might not be enough time, Orin decides to evolve first and stay with Raisin as long as possible, choosing to spend every remaining minute beside him. Orin transforms into a gray carp and gains power over clay and earth. This power allows him to freely mold clay, even cleanse polluted areas, and also makes him resistant to diseases and destruction. Testing the ability, Orin playfully molds clay. Raisin does not hide his surprise at how natural it comes. The evolution succeeded, and Orin immediately begins to explore this new kind of power. Orin tells Raisin to keep eating and getting stronger, while he restrains himself and watches carefully if his brother objects. He stands up and agrees, though he feels awkward. He is the only one eating. After a week, the incense finally dissipated and the river calmed. When the danger receded, the creatures returned, and Oren sighed with relief they could safely ascend the river again. At dawn, he wakes after a restless night, irritated by the incessant noise nearby. Surveying the area, he senses something went wrong during the night. There are signs of struggle everywhere, but no decisive outcome. Judging by what remains, he concludes the opponent disappeared, but the fight was clearly unfinished. He compares his strength with others and instantly sees a chasm. Raw power alone won't save here, so skills must cover this weakness. Having eaten what was left after the previous clash, he gains experience and feels his strength growing. Though still weak, he understands proper use of abilities can turn him into a real threat. With sunrise, he feels he has reached his peak for now and calmly prepares to find out where his growth will lead next. He reviewed the list of possible evolutions and settled on the path of the water snake, comparatively weaker than the berserk worms but still a step forward. Fragile and dangerous to use, the water snake has great growth potential, and after checking his condition, he realizes this evolution will eventually lead to the water white. Having accepted the choice, he agrees to the evolution and feels his body changing as he grows into a new form. After the evolution, he looked again at his status and saw that most indicators had barely shifted. The real value lay in the skills he had unlocked. New resistances activate and his skill list expands much more than he expected. Reviewing them, he realizes that the options in battle have increased significantly. Even if his strength is still limited, these abilities provide many ways to fight and survive. He begins to combine his new abilities. He tries to organize the growing list. At first, the number of skills simply overwhelms him, but he focuses on synthesis to make them useful. By trial and error, he finally successfully combines related water skills into more powerful, purer techniques. Reviewing the results, he understands that careful planning is more important than haste. He decides not to make sloppy combinations anymore and to build skills so that they are effective and do not hinder his overall development, and suddenly realizes there was one simple rule that no one told him about. Skills had to be sorted by type, not mixed randomly. Once he understands this, everything starts to fall into place. Looking over his previous setup, he sees that it was already correct, just done differently. Irritated but relieved, he admits that his instincts were right and decides from now on to refine his skills by working in the correct order. He grumbled that no one properly explained, saying that if they had told him earlier, he would have understood everything. Calming down, he gathered his thoughts and began to reflect on what had just happened. As the irritation fades, he again turns his attention to his own growth and with a clear head decides to move forward and start trying another new skill. He decides to test the skill, although he is not quite sure how it works. Activating it, he sees how the fog spreads around and involuntarily thinks about its boundaries. He understands that everything depends on how skillfully he controls it. From light mist to dense fog and watching the space fill, he realizes that better control will expand both power and radius. He turns on a new resistance and suddenly loses normal sight. Everything around becomes invisible. At first it seems useless, but then his perception changes, and the world emerges as a clear outline of relief and objects. He suddenly understands that this ability replaces sight with another way of sensing the space around. Although he does not see as usual, he still feels outlines, distances, and movement. This power is strangely useful as he gets used to it. He experiments with unlimited control over water and creates it simply from the air. The water freely floats and he quickly learns to move it as he wishes. Moving it left and right, he realizes that it smoothly responds to his intent. Experimenting, he noticed that it can hold and carry light objects, but he feels there is still more to think about here, and he does not stop looking for better ways to apply this skill. He enveloped himself with swirling water and suddenly realized that he could lift his body on its forces. At first, it is hard to maintain balance, but the water responds to his thoughts. During training, he manages to rise higher and move in the air. From above, he recognizes the river below and feels how far he has come. The surroundings became clear. He felt confidence and began to get used to the new way of moving. But during a trial, suddenly someone grabbed him from above and threw him into the air. Suddenly he struggles as a huge bird clings to him. He quickly realizes that this creature is hunting, grabbing prey right in motion, tearing it into pieces and carrying it to the nest. Clenched in its claws, he understands that he has become the target of a dangerous predator. Struggling in this grip, he realizes how dangerous the situation is. This bird is huge and powerful enough to destroy entire groups. In the air, it is almost impossible to handle him, and when you see his size next to a person, the threat becomes obvious. He understands if he is carried into the nest, he will have to face an even greater danger, possibly another one just like it. Having no chance to fight head-on, he knows he must plan every step before it becomes too late. Not allowing himself to be taken, he decides to fight back right in the air and, using close combat skills, strikes the bird's weak spot and forces it to loosen its grip. The sudden counterattack catches the predator by surprise, destroying its control. When the bird stumbles, the balance of the fight shifts precariously, giving him a moment to turn the course of events. The bird tries to keep him pinned down, confident in its strength. He responds by creating water spears in the air and skillfully launching them with each strike. As his control strengthens, they hit harder and force the predator to retreat. Feathers fly in all directions. Bird finally realizes it underestimated its prey, and the fight completely turns in his favor. He unleashes a rapid barrage of water spears, surrounding the bird from all sides instead of trying to deliver a perfect strike. He covers it with an avalanche of force and pressure. Caught in the storm of attacks, the bird loses control in the air. Unable to stabilize, it falls downward. It has completely lost its advantage in flight. He changes tactics and launches another move, drawing the bird into a swirling current. In a moment, thick fog spreads and swallows the sky around them. Sudden loss of visibility throws the predator into confusion. Hidden in the fog, he remains calm. He knows that surprise would finally turn the fight completely in his favor. From the fog, he shoots precisely with short, compressed jets of water, and the swirling stream holds the bird in place, leaving it no chance to dodge. One shot hits the target, then another one that breaks through its defense. With each strike, the predator's movement slows down, and it becomes clear that the attack finally hits. The bird does not give up. It forces its wings to spread and cuts through part of the airflow. Even wounded, it refuses to fall and fights with all its might to stay in the air. He watches intently, surprised by that endurance but confident that his plan is working. And while the fog and spears are still in effect, the battle turns into a test of endurance, and the predator desperately tries not to fall. Suddenly, he changes his approach and pours water into the air around the bird, and the predator, caught off guard, begins to suffocate in flight. The water sticks to its head and wings. While it panics and loses control, he tightens his grip even more and does not ease the pressure. It suffocates, struggles, and cannot break free. Finally, the bird was driven into a losing position. The bird panics and tries to escape, barely maintaining control as they both fall through the air. He simply lets the fall happen. He stands calm while the predator loses its head. Looking at his desperate gaze, he understands that the bird no longer thinks about escape, but only about survival. The initiative sharply changes, and it is clear that the predator already knows he has lost. He blocks the escape, surrounding the bird with dense spheres of water suspended in the air. The program. The predator struggles but cannot break free. The water compresses into a solid prison, completely cutting off movement and control, and nowhere to escape. The fight ends as he calmly holds the suspended, fully bound bird. The bird was completely trapped. He channels all the water into one sharp spear and pours everything he has into the attack. He shoots straight through the prison. The shot lands cleanly, pierces the predator, and with one decisive blow ends the fight. The bird stops fighting, and underestimating him proved to be a fatal mistake. When the bird was breaking apart in the air, he acknowledged the truth of this battle. Brute force was on the enemy's side, but skill and cold mind decided the outcome. When his strength was exhausted and he could no longer use any ability, he was rapidly falling. A moment before hitting the ground, he activated infinite water control one last time to slow the fall, landed softly, and sighed with relief. Knowing he barely survived, he checks his energy was almost gone, and he realizes applying infinite water control is now impossible. Looking at the consequences of the battle, he understands he went too far, exhausted and shaken. He struggles to calm his thoughts, unsure whether his action was reckless or necessary, but feels relief that he is still alive. He desperately gathers every drop of water he can tame, trying to slow his fall. For a moment it seemed hopeful, but the amount is insufficient. Gravity prevails. He falls straight down and crashes to the ground with a thud. The impact finally ends the fight, leaving him battered but alive. After the impact, he forces himself to stay conscious, though he is in pain. Seeing that the bird is still moving, he refuses to give up, and when the bird lunges again, he acts on instinct, pushing his battered body into motion. In a final surge of will, he responds with a close-range strike, determined to finish this before his strength runs out. At the last moment, his energy suddenly returns. All reserves instantly replenish. He instantly gathers water around himself and straightens his body, barely avoiding death. Hitting the ground again, he survived the blow and forced himself to stay alert. Lying down and catching his breath, he reminds himself that relaxing in this world is not allowed even for a second. Catching his breath, he glanced at his status and realized, during the fight nothing evolved or synthesized, but experience taught him new skills. Gaining better control and more defense options, realizing that growth does not always come through evolution, he restructures his thinking. He barely had time to catch his breath when a new threat appeared from above. Another giant bird swoops at him, forcing an instant reaction. When the second bird dived, he instantly jumped back and rushed down through the trees, escaping from the air. He hit hard but survived. The forest concealed him and allowed him to break the chase. Having landed on the ground, he gathered himself and checked his skills, confirming the new ability. Now he can release several water spears simultaneously. Their power depends on his control. On solid ground, he felt calmer and prepared, knowing this terrain finally gives him an advantage. He examines his new abilities and is unimpressed. The water shield activates automatically, but is still rough and primitive. Comparing options, he suddenly notices a pattern between limitless control over water, water spears, and layers of protection. After careful thought, he realized that new skills are not given just like that. They are born when you develop, combine, and constantly refine what you already have. He begins to experiment with new ways to control water, pulling it out and giving it shape. He forms thin water threads. Their strength depends on his control. Testing them on the ground, he sees that they can bind and restrain movements. Realizing how flexible this is, he plans to rely less on brute force and more on clever traps and precise actions, using everything around to fight smarter. He catches the perfect moment of movement, and the water instantly reacts as soon as something touches it. The trap triggers on contact and firmly pins the target in place. Seeing how it works, he understands this is exactly the skill he needed. By shaping water not into attacks but into conditions, he has found a reliable way to control enemies. Still, he feels that he is entering dangerous territory. His talent is growing, and this can easily attract stronger threats. A few days pass, and he secretly tests his new device in the wild when an animal steps into the zone. The trap triggers instantly, water strikes outward, followed by a precise spear, and the fight ends with one clean move. Watching from cover, he confirms that the method works exactly as intended. After several successful hunts, he checks his progress and clearly feels the difference. Control has improved, stats have risen, new resistances have appeared. Looking at the fallen prey, he realizes that he no longer just survives by chance. Calm and confident, he accepts that he has grown into a true hunter. One who sets traps and chooses patience over senseless fights. Notices a signal from one of his traps and instantly knows that prey has stepped into the trap. New skills open up every time he experiments. He can shape clay, alter terrain, and even share vision through the forms he creates. Some of these skills help only in specific situations, while others fit perfectly with his fighting style. Transforming water spears into thin, controlled threads, he gains better accuracy and control, and looking at the results, realizes his growth is not accidental at all. Everything begins to go in a clear, conscious way, and feeling confidence in progress, he decides to test himself against a stronger opponent. He moves through the grass, and suddenly a giant predator emerges before him, making him almost tiny next to it. Just one look and the danger becomes obvious, but he remains focused and is already thinking about how to use range, control, and support to directly confront this new threat. The beast roars and lunges forward without hesitation. Its size and power impress at first glance. He freezes for a moment, realizing this is no ordinary hunt. When the monster charges forward, tearing the ground with every step, he instantly focuses. The real test begins, and against such an enemy, no mistakes can be made. For a moment, panic whispers to him, "Run," but seeing the monster approaching, he understands fleeing now would mean remaining weak forever. This enemy is weaker than the previous one, but still seems insurmountable. Clenching his teeth in fear, he makes his choice. If he retreats here, he will never move forward, so he throws himself into battle and simultaneously releases several water cannons. The bullets hit the monster from different sides, forcing it to slow down, and even when it breaks through the barrage, the constant pressure throws it off balance. Keeping distance and choosing the moment accurately, he controls the pace and proves that this time he will not be broken so easily. The monster rushes forward, but something is wrong. As soon as it steps, the ground suddenly comes alive. Sharp water spears shoot up from below, and one by one they pierce it, restraining its movement. The lunge abruptly stops. The trap works fully, catching the beast by surprise and pinning it in place. The beast thrashes against the spears, breaking some of them. Water splashes as it manages to free part of its body. and turns its head toward him. For a moment they are face to face, even wounded and slowed. The monster is still dangerous, and he realizes the fight is not over yet. The monster makes a final lunge, pushing everything into a head-on collision. It does not retreat and puts all its skills into the fight. It attacked the lands, and the beast finally fell. Looking at its fall, he was most surprised by himself. It was precisely the skill of properly using his abilities that decided everything. For the first time he realizes this is his true victory, won by his own strength. After a few days he no longer rushes into battle impulsively, but begins to plan. He carefully studies the terrain and tracks the enemy's movements over time. Having this information, he prepares the place in advance along their usual path. He sets water traps, and looking at them, this time he feels confident. He no longer reacts, he prepares everything to truly challenge his strongest enemy, and just at the right moment the monster appears and enters the zone he prepared. From cover he watches intently and confirms this is the very target he was waiting for. As soon as it steps forward and lunges into attack, he knows the plan has started to work. This time he is ready, and the fight begins on his terms. The trap worked exactly as planned, and the monster stumbled as soon as it stepped on it. From cover he moves without hesitation. He unleashes a chain attack with water spears. A hail of spears flies one after another to finish the fight before the enemy can recover, and maintaining calm and focus, he gives this attack his all because he knows this moment decides the clash. The spears tore through the ground and struck the monster, forcing it to stop and let out a roar of pain. He instantly reads the reaction, adjusts, and confirms the aim. The creature breaks through the damage, still standing, but its movements have clearly slowed. Noticing that his plan is working, he tenses, ready to take advantage and not stop. The monster crashes into the ground with colossal force. The impact tears up the soil around. Before it can recover, thank you very much. From above, watery spears pour down, striking the target one after another. Each blow keeps her pinned down, breaking all her momentum and giving no chance for a counterattack. The battlefield trembles from the increasing pressure, and with each strike the distance between them grows. The monster shrugged off the attack and rose from the crater, sweeping away all traps with a single shockwave. Hiding in the grass, he realizes how truly dangerous this enemy is. Their gazes met, and the tension instantly surged. The monster lunged at him again, and he realized the fight was far from over, and one mistake now could cost him everything. The monster responded with stunning force, piercing the outskirts and wiping out all their preparations with a single shot. He was rejected, and he understands that the plan has completely failed. Worse, his position has been exposed. The enemy noticed him, and the battle turns into a direct confrontation with no room for traps or mistakes. He was thrown into the air and fell onto the grass, stunned by the incredible force of the attack. Rising, he finally understands the chasm between them. The monster laughs, completely relaxed, as if the whole fight is a game. Realizing he lost focus for a second, he comes to his senses and looks him in the eyes again. This enemy is not just strong, is calm, confident, and clearly enjoying the fight. He fires another wave of water spears, testing the monster's reaction. The enemy moves effortlessly, gliding through attacks without a hint of panic. Seeing that smooth dodge, he instantly understood everything. The opponent does not even take him seriously, and the same tactics will no longer work, so he sharply changes his approach and releases one precise water spear. The blow wraps around and tightly binds the monster's body, completely stopping its movements. Caught by surprise, the beast froze in place, realizing too late what had happened. With a single simple strike at the right moment, he proves that accuracy and control matter more than brute force. With the monster pinned down, he does not hesitate, instantly goes on the offensive, unleashing a dense hail of water spears from above. The attack crashes into the trapped body and tears it apart immediately, not giving it a chance to recover. The ground shakes from the blow, and the breach he created becomes the decisive strike. Even after a precise hit, he does not allow himself to relax. He knows the gap in strength still remains, and one mistake can turn everything upside down. His energy is rapidly draining, so he decides not to rush forward. He keeps his distance and watches closely. Choosing survival and control instead of reckless hand-to-hand combat, he decided not to waste the hard-won chance. The monster roars wildly and thrashes about, pushing its strength through the bonds and tearing the water shackles. A crack spread as its strength sharply increased, and the pressure instantly surged. When he saw how its expression changed, a chill ran through him. Whatever it was about to do, it was not ordinary resistance. It was a sign that something dangerous was about to break free. The monster's body changes right before his eyes. Old wounds stop bleeding, muscles swell, and its presence becomes heavier. It no longer just endures, it actively recovers and overcomes damage. Seeing these traits emerge, he instantly understood the truth. The enemy is not breaking, it is entering a stronger state, and the fight is about to become much more dangerous. He quickly discards brute force, changes his mindset, and repeating, sharpens his control. He stirs the air and water into a huge current that overturns the battlefield. Having drawn the monster's attention, he deliberately retreats, leading it where needed. Recalling the nearby river, he decides that control is more important than strength in the next phase. If it attacks again, it won't be head-on, he will choose a place where his skills decide everything. The monster hurls debris with brutal force and he barely dodges the worst. One mistake here and it would be fatal. Seeing the danger clearly, he strengthens his defense and raises a water shield. Hurrying is impossible here. One clean hit and it's over, so he gathers himself and prepares for the next exchange with maximum caution. He hides behind multi-layered water shields and uses the terrain to break the line of sight. The beast still lunges in attack, confused but aggressive, blindly swinging through the cover. Even without seeing it clearly, it acts on instinct, attacks and hits. It threw him into the air. The clash proves that the enemy can still press him closely, even when vision and position are disrupted. He raises water shields again and again, barely keeping up as the monster advances. Each blow breaks through his defense faster than he expected, forcing him to dodge at the last moment. Even moving cautiously, he still takes hits and realizes the enemy is adapting. The exchange of blows at close range becomes brutal, and it becomes clear you can't hold out on defense for long. He sharply pushed off and, barely conscious, slid to the riverbank. His body does not obey at all, and even lifting his head is difficult for him. Knowing that he has exceeded his strength, he forces himself not to fall asleep even for a moment, and struggling to move. The monster creeps through the trees and reaches him before he manages to recover. Pressed against the riverbank, he begs for at least one more second because his body barely holds on. The monster steps into the water, certain that the fight is already decided, but even then does not admit defeat. Clenching his teeth from pain, he clings to one last idea because he knows, if the enemy lowers his guard now, everything can still turn around. At the last moment, he flooded the river and trapped the monster in a giant water bubble. The pressure crushes its limbs and pulls it underwater, cutting off any hope of escape, and the writhing enemy only forces him to squeeze his grip even tighter. He is calm and focused, watching the bubbles rise, and understands this is the chance he was waiting for, the moment when control finally overcomes brute force. The monster suddenly breaks out, tearing the water prison with its brute strength. It recoils in shock, stunned by the spectacle. Even drowning it is not enough to end the fight. The enemy stands like a stone, completely unmoved, and he suddenly realizes the truth. This cannot be resolved quickly, and there is no simple way out anymore. The monster lunges forward, trying to finish him off with one bite. He acts on instinct and, despite the pain, forces his body to move. At the last moment, he breaks free. The attack crashed into the ground instead of him. The impact shook the outskirts, but he is still alive. Barely standing on his feet, he feels the fight has reached the most dangerous moment. One wrong move and he will be completely consumed. He throws everything into a desperate counterattack, biting the monster closely with his fangs. The strike hits, cracks, and spreads. Its force breaks through the defense, but the enemy still does not fall. Roaring in pain, covered in blood and exhausted, he realizes that this is no longer just about victory. Still standing, gathering his last strength and moving on, he chooses to face this world head-on, no matter how cruel it becomes. The monster howled as the pain finally caught up with it. It grabbed its injured arm, blood gushed in shock, and its confidence cracked for the first time. He watches carefully and notices hesitation in the creature's eyes. The balance shifts again, not because the enemy is weaker, but because it finally begins to feel fear. The monster lunges at the attack again, enraged by the damaged antenna. It does not retreat even in pain. Power surged into him, sharper and heavier than before. His transformation is complete. He meets the beast's gaze, ready to finish the fight on equal terms. Surge of power subsides. The body finally stabilizes after evolution. Wounds close. The power feels denser. A new ability related to earth and murky water awakens. He realizes that his race has changed. He has become an earth serpent, master of soil, mud, and dirty water. His HP and MP restored and new abilities unlocked. He calmly looks ahead, knowing he is now much stronger. The evolved serpent reacts instantly, and the monster attacking with claws. He sharply turns and dashes forward first, crossing the battlefield in a wide arc. The strike misses, the enemy loses balance and slips aside, and the serpent repositions. The course of the fight clearly changes. Now it controls the tempo. The serpent sharpens control. Restrained water floods the space and prevents the enemy from recovering. and even after evolution and regaining strength, the monster realizes its regeneration will no longer work properly. Still relying on brute force, it rushed forward and swung with all its might. The strike hit. The serpent flew, proving that despite all the tricks and skills, the enemy's direct hit is still dangerous. The serpent found its footing again and moved on. Knowing that stopping now means defeat, he warns the monster. The same attack will no longer work, and the enemy rushes forward without any hesitation, full of confidence and brute force. The snake silently watches, cold-bloodedly calm, staring at the movements and sensing something is wrong with the rhythm. The monster hesitates. Confused by the snake's sudden caution, it feels something else and wonders why it stopped moving so boldly. In a moment, earth and water twist together, forming a fierce whirlpool. The snake realizes that it had previously consciously restrained its power and now unleashes a destructive current that drags everything around. The enemy realizes too late that the boundless control over water has not disappeared, it was simply redirected, and looking around, he sees only destruction. The monster panics and decides to flee. He is convinced that the snake's power is much greater than he expected, so he turns and runs without looking back. The snake watches, understands that the enemy is fleeing, and again rushes into attack, determined not to miss this chance and finish off the monster before it escapes. The monster rushed forward but suddenly fell headlong. The ground beneath him deceived him. The ground that seemed solid turned out to be a fake swamp created by the snake. He struggled in the mud, confusion and fear playing on his face, and realized too late that the snake had turned the very earth into a trap, turning the battlefield against him and cutting off the escape route. The snake eased the pressure and retreated. The swamp settled, leaving the monster half submerged and unable to move freely. Realizing that he was completely lost, the monster froze in silence. The snake spared him and clearly made it understood. Survival is only possible if he stays out of her way and decisively put an end to it. A huge column of compressed water strikes the ground, tearing up dirt and stones and scattering everything around. The shockwave covers the monster, crushes and buries him as the earth settles. When the water subsides, nothing remains where the enemy stood. The serpent releases everything at once. A huge flow of sand and water bursts forward, carving a straight path through the earth. The current is unstable and uncontrollable, tearing the soil, uprooting trees, and reshaping the landscape. And the attack strikes not only the target, it threatens to sweep away everything in its path. The attack finally subsides, leaving behind a huge scar carved into the ground. The serpent realizes it has spent too much energy, much more than was necessary. The dust settles, the earth collapses inward, and the place remains in ruins. Looking at the devastation, it is clear this was not a victory, but a disaster. The serpent surveys the ruins and sees the enemy is either buried in mud or blown away by the explosion, so it decides to check for sure Gabok is alive or dead. Just as it was about to retreat and conserve strength, it hears a barely audible sound. Gabok is still breathing. Realizing the fight is not over, the serpent warns itself, be vigilant and prepare for what comes next. The serpent unleashes the final devastating attack, certain this is the end. Gabok is caught in its vortex and barely clings to life. As the dust settles, he realizes he survived only because he changed at the last moment. Both sides understand the fight is finally over, and the serpent stands victorious after a terrible moment that could have turned out very differently. After the battle, the serpent calms down and realizes how reckless it was to rely on such destructive power. The surrounding land is completely destroyed, and it does not know what to do next. Still, this fight is a victory. Gabok is defeated, and they are one step closer to the dragon they seek. The serpent, reflecting on the danger and how the fight made it stronger, acknowledges Gabok's power and the experience gained, after which it prepares properly to finish the matter and move on. After Gabok's defeat, the serpent finally evolved. It turned out to be Susioja, the serpent of the Earth King, a rare and dangerous creature that commands earth serpents. The evolution sharply raised its race, level, and attributes, and power with authority immediately became palpable. Along with these changes, it gains new abilities. One allows it to crush stones and mold fluid stone weapons from the fragments, increasing damage over time. Another hardens mud into armor, enhancing defense. Though it has weak spots and now recognized as a royal-class serpent, it becomes a rare creature to be reported to the country, marking a huge turning point in its path. After evolution, the snake reconsiders and combines its skills in a new way. First, it attacks, creating water swords whose power grows with each spent energy. Then it strengthens close combat by coating its fangs with poison. Each bite becomes a serious threat that continues to harm the enemy. Next, it focuses on defense and support. Mixing water and earth barriers, it can create shields from mud, fresh, or sea water depending on the situation. These fortifications absorb blows but steal a lot of energy, so they must be used wisely. Finally, it hones control over the terrain. Changing the soil and shaping the earth, it quickly reshapes the relief, makes clay, and builds or moves mud dolls for combat or support. Thanks to such combinations, the snake gains a balanced attack, defense, and battlefield control, proving that now it fights with a plan, not just by instinct. After the battle, the snake falls powerless, completely exhausted and unable to move. The fight is over, and the Gobok is defeated. Weakened but alive, the snake decides to retreat and recover, knowing that the caused destruction will attract attention. When others approach the place, it slips away and the clash is temporarily halted. Snake slowly regains consciousness and looks around confusedly. Instead of wild freedom, it finds itself in a metal cage and suddenly realizes it has been captured and taken to an unknown place. The snake notices two people standing in front of the cage. From their words and reactions, it understands everything. It realizes that it has been caught and brought to a place where monsters are kept and observed. Now, it is no longer free in the wild. The snake suddenly understands it has really been caught and will be sold as a pet. Panic grips it. It frantically thrashes in the cage, biting and hitting the bars. But the barrier holds firm and there is no way out. The snake fights even harder but quickly grasps the truth. This cage is not like all the others. It absorbs magic and neutralizes brute force, but when it realizes that escape is impossible and its abilities are useless, panic consumes it. This prison is made specifically for monsters like it. In the cage, the snake notices a frightened human girl curled up nearby. At first, she panics, thinking she is in danger, but the snake quickly realizes that she is not an enemy. Understanding the situation, it calms down and tries to comfort her, surprised that a human is imprisoned next to it. In the cage, the snake panics at first and thinks it looks terrible, but quickly corrects itself and insists that it is actually gentle and not dangerous. The girl screams in fear. Confused and overwhelmed by being locked among wild creatures, they both realize they are trapped together and do not understand why a human and a monster were put in the same cage. The snake looks closely at the girl and suddenly realizes how young she still is. Locked in the cage in iron collars and shackles, her body is covered with scratches, her clothes torn and thin. She quickly understands that this is not ordinary captivity. But it turns out to be a serious crime, and she is shocked realizing that she has become a victim of kidnapping and violence. The snake panics. It realizes that the girl is about to be sold and immediately decides to save her. It hesitates for a moment. One might assume that this is some organization or just a misunderstanding, but the girl's fear and her condition loudly say something is very wrong here. A threatening man arrives. At first glance, it was clear that he was hostile and aggressive. The snake instantly senses danger and understands that he is a criminal. The girl recoils in fear, confirming that this situation is truly dangerous and urgent. The man bursts in and shouts, trying to scare everyone. The snake panics, but with all its heart wants to calm the girl, although it cannot speak. Using an old skill, it transforms its thoughts into words that people can understand. The man freezes in shock. He hears the snake talking and finally realizes that before him is not an ordinary creature. The snake is stunned to realize it understands people but cannot respond to them. Both remain silent in their cages, exhausted and shaken. The girl quietly sobs and the snake looks at her, feeling helpless as the moment finally dawns. The girl notices water gathering nearby and touches it. The water rises and moves on its own, turning in her hands into a small, lively figure. She reacts with surprise, then her face lights up with a bright smile. She exclaims with delight as she realizes the water responds to her, watching the water sparkle and swirl around her. Surprised by this, she suddenly wonders where it came from and turns to the white snake as she tries to speak. The snake reacts in a way that makes it clear it understands her words, which surprises her even more. The girl shines with genuine admiration, smiling as she talks to the white snake. The snake understands her voice and every spoken word, but what is written for her is empty, and this surprises her. Yet the moment was warm. Both understood that they could communicate, and the fear between them receded. The girl enthusiastically bombards the snake with questions, overwhelming it. Realizing that he cannot speak, she apologizes and calms down. She calls herself Olna, admits that she was afraid to be alone, but now she feels calmer because the white snake is nearby. Elena joyfully reaches out her hand to the snake and says she eagerly awaits the start of their joint work. He hesitates, not knowing how to respond. After a few days, the snake spends time with the children, clearly distracted from thoughts of escape. It slowly got involved in this new situation. The men chatter, soon we will sell the snake's skin and take it to a bigger market. The snake stubbornly does not give up and constantly thinks about how to become stronger through evolution. Nearby, Olna is silent, worried. While the snake understands that time is running out, he needs to act now. Alana wakes up from a nightmare and notices the anxious snake nearby. Calming down, she thanks him and begins to tell about her past. She told how their village was attacked, people were captured and sold into slavery, and the scene ends with others being taken away while she remains, trembling but relieved she was finally heard. The snake asked about her relatives, and Alina bitterly confirmed they were captured together. When he asks if one of them is her, she quietly explains that her parents tried to help her and her sister escape. And she, with a calm smile, says that her father was killed. Snake gently comforts her. Tell her that crying is normal since she held everything inside for so long. She thanks him, forces a smile, and says that now everything is fine, crying won't change anything. But finally she can't hold back, tears fall, she grits her teeth and sobs. Alone in the cage, she hides her face and cries quietly. In her tears is visible the pain she had long hidden. Watching from afar, the snake suddenly realizes how strong she was and wonders how to find a way to get her out. He apologizes for crying and listens as thought arises to run away together, calm but resolute. He refuses, saying that she cannot abandon the peasants and run away. She confesses that she has an older sister. She was also captured along with her and taken in another carriage. Trusting him, she asks, "Don't worry about me, first help my sister." He says he knows better where to go, and she smiles and says there is a chance to save her sister, even if she herself cannot escape. He insists on staying to protect the villagers. He admits that saving her now might be impossible, but swears to go and save her sister instead. She explains that the jewel once belonged to her mother and it was by it that her sister recognized her, so she thanks him for returning it. Then she recalls how panic arose around when a giant serpent appeared. She whispered that if he meets her sister, let him show the jewel. It is their secret sign to recognize each other. After a few days, he reaches the limit of his growth and sincerely thanks her for the food she shared. She cheerfully asks if he will grow even more. He is clearly delighted, enthusiastically explains his next transformation, hints at a new form, and quietly asks himself if this is really the path fate has assigned him. He learns his next evolution is a data worm, a form that drives other worms into a wild rage while his body begins to change. He moves to the edge of the cage and rapidly grows. Olna worries, his voice and presence begin to change. This means the evolution has already started. He completes the evolution and transforms into a huge data worm, smashing the cage and everything around it. He holds his breath, staring at his new body. Suddenly he realizes how huge and strange he has become, and this worries him and everyone around. The creature's instincts burst out, and his voice, fueled by hunger, shocks even himself. Realizing this has become dangerous, it desperately tries to restrain these impulses. Seeing that the girl is safe, it calms down, and her relief confirms, even in the new form, it has not lost control. The monster fully reveals its new form, stunning and disturbing, and the girl freezes in shock as she realizes how dangerous it now is. Still, she calls him, unsure if that familiar presence is still here. The monster looms over her, strange whispers are heard around, and its transformation enters a terrifying stage. The girl panics, fearing the worst, but then notices that its behavior hasn't changed. When it gently scratches its head, she realizes that it is the same creature, confused and not attacking, and she remains stunned, not knowing what will happen next. The creature loses control, hunger and instinct take over and pull it toward the girl. Though it tries to restrain itself, the girl stands frozen and scared. But instead of attacking, it hesitates and retreats, full of embarrassment and guilt, realizing it cannot harm her, leaving them both shaken in tense silence. The monster lunges, but the girl suddenly screams and everything instantly stops. Nearby, a loud explosion thundered, throwing earth and smoke into the air. When everything cleared, an adult man lay on the ground, wounded but alive, and the creature was thrown aside. The attack suddenly ceased. At the explosion site yawned a huge crater that swallowed everything around. The girl rushes there, stunned by the destruction. The white serpent gathers what remains of its power, but it crumbles in its hands, broken and unstable. Seeing that the man is still alive, the girl understands. Danger has passed, though the consequences are far from over. Elena hesitates, wipes her tears, and apologizes for crying. The serpents offer to flee together, but Elena says she cannot simply abandon the villagers who were captured. She puts others before herself, showing her determination. Data Worm miraculously survived the battle, and the sun begins to set. The main character, again in the form of a snake, sighed with relief. He is alive. He realizes that it is already evening and decides to move to a safer place, not expecting the same attackers, but eventually manages to turn the situation around and use another worm to help himself in evolution. Having escaped danger and lived until evening, the main character finally finds a quiet, safe shelter and decides to test his new form. They changed race twice and now appeared as Orin, a special type of snake that climbs trees and can hide. Stats and special skills have greatly improved, and a rare ability, Voice of the Heavens, stands out, connected with rare species and words of the past. The orange snake is described as gentle, but in reality it is a unique hunter that can control trees up to various and catches prey. The snake, now with new powers, has mastered several special skills. It stealthily sneaks up on prey, magically cleanses or transforms the earth, and forges sharp blades from water that cut even the hardest ore. Its fangs produce strong acids and poisons, and it can also heal deep wounds of others thanks to powerful healing abilities. After evolution, the snake excitedly tests all its new skills and statuses. Now it can move silently, control the earth, create water blades, release strong acids, and perform powerful healing, and it also lists many other skills and resistances. Then it decides to climb to a high point and from there survey the surroundings, planning to find at least some information about Sadalu from above. The forest seems endless, but the closer they get, the more clearly a lonely house stands out in its depths. Huge wooden gates appear, tied with thick ropes and supported by old posts. Ahead, a lone figure is already kneeling and quietly working near the entrance. The warrior tensed when he felt some owning nearby. Approaching the gates, a strange scene opened before him. A young half-human girl, withdrawn inside, silently and intently watches him. She explains that people come in many forms, even half-humans, and they treat everything so calmly, as if it is completely normal. After the meeting, everything seems strange and a little unreal, and the warrior, looking closely at the place, notices signs of neglect. From the worn clothing to the gate standing in ruins despite the decay, it is clear that this place was once guarded for an important reason. Hiding nearby, a small creature silently observes. Realizing they have learned enough, he decides to approach closer and scout. In the village, silence and ruins, empty streets and destroyed houses, not a single person anywhere. Really wandering among the ruins, the small creature searches for clues and heads to the largest building, hoping that someone or useful information can still be found there. In the attic, the silence breaks when the warrior finally meets Girl. She keeps her distance. She is clearly wary and used to solitude. He understands that this isolation is dangerous for her, but there is still tension between them. They do not fully trust each other yet. The warrior apologizes for the harsh life that Girl was forced to live, and she quietly wonders when she will finally be free. Nearby, the small creature feels that something is wrong with the abandoned village, and it becomes uneasy. Suddenly, an unexpected presence arises, disturbing the fragile calm and making everyone tense. A sudden, uninvited attacker revealed his hostile intentions, and the warrior without hesitation stood before the only girl. The small creature was stunned and did not manage to escape. In an instant, the attacker telekinetically grabs it. The tense situation instantly turns into an open confrontation. After an exhausting clash, the warrior finally lowers his weapon and relaxes his vigilance, certain that the danger has passed. At the same time, the only girl moves on her own, behaving as if she should not be able to do so. Before he could react, a sudden sound rolled through the building, a sign of a new threat that completely caught him off guard. The attacker drags the small creature through the collapsing structure, and dust from the debris covers everything around. Using this chaos as cover, the creature tries to break free while the building shakes around them, and amid the destruction, the moment turns into a desperate chase with no time to hesitate. Surrounded by smoke and debris, the warrior steps forward, draws his blade, and stands between the threat and the Oni girl standing behind him. There is nowhere left to run, and both prepare to face the enemy face to face as the tension reaches its peak. With no way out, the warrior grips the hilt tighter and bursts forward, striking through the smoke with full force. A sudden counterstrike cuts through the chaos and becomes the moment when the fight truly begins. The warrior unleashes water technique, flooding the surroundings with powerful streams under his control, and uses this tide to force the space to open. He turns the furious onslaught into a chance to break free and strike back at the enemy. Water attack scatters over the ground, freezing and cracking the surface as the warrior rushes forward. Slipping through the hole he made himself, he instantly closed the distance with one swift move. Catching the enemy by surprise, the course of the battle suddenly changes. Using the stream of water beneath his feet, the warrior spins into a wide, sweeping strike, and the swirling current amplifies his motion. Pushing the attack forward with lightning speed and force, the enemy realizes too late that he is simply overwhelmed. When the dust settles, the lone girl stands behind, watching, surprised at how quickly the fight became one-sided. On the ground lies the defeated enemy. It turned out to be a rare white snake. She is stunned by the outcome. It became clear that the threat was truly eliminated. Seeing the danger, the warrior instantly lunges forward and stops the lone girl before she can get too close. He pulls her back, remaining vigilant, for he knows even a defeated enemy can still be dangerous. The lone girl suddenly strikes the ground. A powerful blow throws the warrior far back. The dust disperses. The white snake understands that the warrior is no longer bound, and everything suddenly turns upside down. The only girl realizes her mistake and, apologizing, falls to her knees. She attacked without knowing who the white snake really was. The snake is calm and unharmed, clearly indicating that it had no hostile intentions. When the tension subsides, the misunderstanding is finally resolved. The only girl suddenly understood. The white snake understands her language. This confirmed the ancient legend she had heard before. Enchanted by the discovery, she instantly calms down and apologizes, now looking at the snake with curiosity rather than fear. The warrior proudly calls himself the guardian of this place, and Ana girl politely apologizes and admits that she is a priestess in the demon temple. She carefully makes sure that the white snake understands them, and this fascinates her. The old legend comes true, and she and the warrior stand stunned by what they have seen. The only girl explains, in the village, the white snake is revered as a heavenly servant and believed to understand human speech. They say whoever touches it will bring a curse. The curse does not fall on the snake itself but affects everyone around the one who touched it. Both Neil and Apologia sincerely admitted their actions were aimed at protecting each other. The white snake remains calm, not angry at all, noticing the warrior's wounds. The only girl understands that helping him recover is perhaps the only way to earn the snake's trust. Only one girl used a powerful healing skill, healed the warrior's wounds, and almost completely restored him. The white snake watches intently and quietly approves, accepting this act as sincere. When the tension disappeared, trust finally began to blossom between them. The warrior says that powerful healing abilities are rare and dangerous to Shothi immediately attract people who want to exploit them. He warns that people with such abilities are often exploited and used as tools. The white snake listens carefully and begins to realize the risk associated with her power. The white snake asks about the village, and the only girl begins to tell about its past. In the east spread a small but lively settlement, a modest community of people who lived peacefully. That usual life was cut off a few weeks ago. A slave trader arrived, and everything was turned upside down. The only girl explains that the slave traders quickly drove out the village demon and only then attacked. Although the demon was incredibly strong, the village was still overwhelmed by the advance of a large armed force. Some residents were killed, others taken captive, and the village was burned to the ground. Only a few survived, and among them are those who are here now. The warrior swears to track down the slave trader responsible for this bloody massacre. So few survivors remain that the only girl decides they need to find allies and rebuild the village together. They talk about slavery and realize with horror that without an active war, most slaves now are captured civilians. The slave trader now hunts people, not prisoners of war, seeing the captives tied up and treated it. The events harden their resolve, exposing the cruelty of the world with painful clarity. They learn with horror that the slave traders are part of a powerful, officially recognized organization operating in several countries. One base is connected to the kingdom of Sadatan, bordering the kingdom of Garot. As soon as they understood that captured villagers were brought here, the threat suddenly became much larger and significantly more organized. Two armed men appeared and immediately recognized Jade and Tondu, instantly linking them to the destroyed village. It is heard that nearby an adventurer hired by the slave trader was spotted. The news confirmed their fears, and now there is no time to wait. The threat is dangerously close. Even more guards are gathering and confirming their readiness. They say the enemy is about 200 men. Tenda is getting increasingly irritated, and the warrior asks for restraint and coordinated actions instead of decisions made under emotional influence. When they move together, it becomes clear brute force will not help, but true teamwork will. The group argues about what to do with the white snake. Everyone is shocked by its importance and the fact that it is here. Jay decides to leave now, promises to explain everything later, and thus clearly indicates their priority is retreat. Although they saw in it a divine protector, they accepted that it cannot be forced and hurriedly moved on. The white snake, knowing about the danger ahead, decided to head to Sadala on its own. Jade decides to go for it. She believes that for now it is safer to stay together. Although she was still tormented by anxiety because of the powerful slave organization, she again ignited with determination, and they moved forward shoulder to shoulder. Jade sincerely thanks the white snake one last time, and when the conversation ends, she returns to the group. The warriors refocus on the task and move together again. The moment of pause has passed. Their journey resumes with a clear intention. As they make their way through the forest, Jade feels that something is wrong and presses the white snake closer. Yet a large crowd of people blocks the path. They were clearly agitated and gathered together. On the spot it was confirmed, the trouble had already spread beyond the village boundaries. The villagers gather in anger and blame the white serpent for their losses. The warrior steps forward and tries to calm them. Explaining the truth to beat their rash action, the crowd froze in shock and it became clear. The legend is real and the serpent understands them. The crowd calms down, anger recedes, replaced by faith. The white serpent is no longer seen as a curse but as a protector, and confidence spreads among the people. Determination returns. They go out together to meet the enemy. Though everything around is dangerous, they choose to stand shoulder to shoulder and keep fighting. The warrior hesitated at first, then accepted the role assigned to him. Men rally behind him, inspired by his resolve and ready to move forward together. Standing aside, Jade notices with slight surprise how naturally everyone began to trust him. Jade's mother, Sim, joins them. Apologizing for being late, she respectfully greets the white serpent. Tendi's brother also introduces himself, and as everyone gathers, it becomes clear that support is forming around Jade and her affairs. The group sets course for the former demon village, exactly where the demon lord now resides. Along the way, they explain this is a real settlement with castles, trade, and diplomacy. Next to the famous leader who was reviving the villages, they believe that this place is their best chance to rest and plan the next step. On the way, the group talked lively about reconstruction and about how to find hope in a peaceful village. When night comes, Jade gently holds the white serpent close until it falls asleep in her arms. In the morning, the calm moment is dispelled by a light tease. For a moment, life seems to return to normal despite everything still ahead. At night, the group gathered around the campfire and finally managed to talk calmly. The warrior sincerely thanks everyone for staying vigilant and acting together, while the white serpent quietly listens nearby. Guards in place, hearts strong, the group settles down and shares a rare wave of calm before setting out on the road again. They realize they can communicate from a distance and excitedly tell how they previously avoided danger. When the water suddenly disappears, the white serpent silently releases its power and fills its emptiness. Seeing this, the group finally realized how reliable and supportive that serpent really was. The warrior understands that the fresh water came from the white serpent. He shares this with everyone, explaining that it is a gift to lift their spirits. While the group drinks together, gratitude spreads among them, and the tense journey momentarily turns into a warm moment of unity. The group gathers strength again and prepares to set off. Everyone's mood has clearly lifted. The warrior thanks the white snake for helping everyone restore their fighting spirit. Watching people laugh again, he thinks about how much they have lost in such a short time and how strong they still are. The white snake cannot understand how people, having lost everything, can still manage to smile. Tenda says that laughter is their way to endure grief and honor those they have lost. Gradually, the snake begins to feel the quiet strength hidden behind their smiles. Tenda explains that demons believe the dead linger briefly and then leave, so the living smile to give them peace. When one looks too deeply into the morning, it begins to be seen as a grasp into death itself. Hearing this, the white snake understood that laughter is their way to say goodbye without falling into despair. The warrior relentlessly urges the patience until they reach the former ogre village and their troops become ready. Yet his determination is clear. Anger burns within him toward those who destroyed the village. The white snake feels his unwavering resolve and understands. He was chosen to follow a person whose feelings are deep and extraordinarily strong. It was told that 5 years ago Jade's father died in battle, and this loss broke her mother. Under the burden of grief, she lost control and awakened dangerous magic. The whole story shows how deeply this tragedy changed everything that happened afterward. They are convinced that the death of her father was the impetus for Jade's transformation, although she herself does not remember it. Over the years, they never took their eyes off her, trying to prevent her from completely losing control. With trust in the white serpent, they beg it to stay close to her and protect her as they move forward. Later, the warrior patrols the area while the others rest, and with a heavy heart notices how exhausted everyone is. Enda was on alert all night, forcing herself not to lower her vigilance. When morning comes, the warrior notices that the white serpent has disappeared, and the forest is strangely quiet. Quietly moving through the forest, she easily tracks the white serpent, relying on her sharp senses. She finds it hidden among the bushes, and it already sensed her presence. After a brief moment of understanding, she approaches calmly, and together they decide to move into the forest. Tenda moves through the thickets, gathering food and relying on instincts and experience, while the white serpent stays close, carefully watching how much strength she gives for the sake of others. Suddenly, a huge shadow appears nearby, breaking the silence and signaling something dangerous is approaching. Sensing this, Tenda decides to face the threat alone and sends the white serpent away to keep it safe. Confident in her speed and strength, she prepares to handle the enemy on her own. The serpent understands the plan and moves to distract attention, ready to strike at the right moment. From the forest suddenly burst a huge beast. The ground shook under its weight. Tenda prepared without hesitation, already reading its movements. Nearby, the white snake twitched in surprise but quickly calmed down while Tenda remained focused, ready to face another dangerous creature one-on-one. The beast was thrown into the air by a powerful kick, its massive body spun from the impact, and even as it fell back, the full force of the attack was visible. The white snake watched in shock as Tenda's strength completely subdued the creature. The white snake simultaneously unleashed a barrage of water spears, slicing through the air with stunning force. The attack struck the beast and tore it from all sides. Tenda froze in shock, watching how the sweep and power of the strike completely turned the tide of the battle. The monster counterattacked and dragged Tenda into a furious whirlpool. But she broke free and landed safely. The white snake tried to come to help but arrived too late. See you next time. Tenda still cannot believe how powerful and reliable the snake's support turned out to be. Tenda admits that her respect for the white snake is due to his character, not because of legend or fear. Moved by his kindness and determination, she decides from now on to fight side by side with him. They sealed their trust with a firm handshake, thus began a true partnership. After several days on the road, the group finally reached their destination. From the height emerges the former settlement, Oni-wide and firmly fortified. Finally seeing this, they were convinced they had reached exactly the place where their next chapter would begin. They step over the threshold of the former village Oni. We walk along the main street between traditional houses. Demons are everywhere, openly living their lives. The place overwhelms the group. It becomes clear that it is much larger and livelier than they expected. They walk the streets and marvel, open shops, people resting, everyday life quietly flows. The village is alive and well kept, quite unlike what they expected. For the white serpent, this is the first time he sees a demon settlement that truly resembles a living, bustling civilization. They arrive at the place and tense up, preparing to meet the one in command. The white serpent is respected, even as others push it forward. Everyone gathered and focused, so the group moves forward, ready for whatever awaits ahead. They are greeted by the village head. Someone is stunned by the number of people who came immediately. The group told that their village was wiped off the face of the earth and only a few survived. Realizing there was no time, the leader decided to report this immediately and take up their defense. The leader organizes the group, sends the survivors to rest, and takes on managing the situation. Help arrived quickly, and everyone was promptly provided shelter and care. Jade properly introduced Tondu and the white serpent, exchanged thanks. The tension eased, and the group was finally accepted into a safe place. They see how life in the village does not stop. It is supported by hard work and mutual help. People notice that Jade is clumsy but sincere, and her older brother quietly lends a shoulder and organizes everything behind the scenes. For now, everything is settled. They move on together, crossing the bridge, while the village around continues living its own life. The group is led inside to meet the supposed ogre lord. They enter a quiet hall where an ancient figure calmly waits. He is completely focused on his food, and they sit admiring the view. The contrast between the terrible reputation and the calm reality immediately strikes. They began to tell what happened, starting with the attack on their village. Only a few people survived, most adults were killed or taken prisoner, and with every word it became clearer to everyone listening how terrible and serious this tragedy was. When the details reach everyone, anger grows in the room. The news of the attack on women and children finally strips the ogre lord of his last restraint. His presence instantly changes, and it becomes clear, this is no longer just a report, this is a matter that requires immediate action. The ogre lord's anger fills the room, squeezing the air painfully. The group involuntarily grabs their weapons, stunned by this sudden change. When the tension subsides, it becomes clear, this overwhelming presence is directed at the enemy, not at them, and then it is revealed how terrible his power really was. The ogre lord calms the situation and tells the group to rest, showing that he has already understood their strategy and condition. Henda and others bow deeply, exhausted but relieved after the fierce confrontation. As the tension subsides, tension shifts to the princess, who gently holds a white serpent in her arms. Everyone silently understands, the creature beside her is not just a legend. the ogre lord looks intently at the white serpent and quickly realizes that it is no ordinary animal, that the legend is real and the serpent understands words and can communicate clearly, while the princess watches in awe as this truth becomes undeniable. The white serpent reacted with surprise upon hearing its name, and its eyes was a living consciousness and intelligence. Calm and composed, the ogre lord thoughtfully reflects on the encounter. This ability is rare and unusual, and he clearly reads the serpent's intentions and power through its actions, recognizing the white serpent as genuine and rare. It even understands language. The lord allowed the white serpent to remain in the castle under his protection, acknowledging its importance. For now, everything is settled. He orders the group to rest and prepares to discuss further steps later, after being allowed to stay. The group walks through the village together. The princess is clearly delighted and rushes ahead, impatiently dreaming of finally washing properly after a long time. As they approach the bathhouse, the white serpent lagged behind, puzzled by the unfamiliar place. Suddenly, the serpent breaks free and frightens the princess. For a moment, chaos reigns until everyone understands what happened, and it ends in surprise rather than danger, showing how relaxed the group has become in the village. Suddenly, the princess is seized by the thought of bathing, fixates on Oren, and without hesitation pulls him into her excitement. She did not understand what was happening at all and rushed to the bathhouse, dragging her mother along. Oren and the rest froze in amazement. The scene turned into chaos, and the white serpent found itself in the middle of everything and was confused by how quickly everything escalated. A week passed after their arrival in the former demon village, and daily life finally calmed down. The group eats together, showing that the village lives peacefully, or someone eats next to others. While the white serpent quietly observes this moment, when everything seems calm and usual, suddenly an unexpected figure appears. The silence breaks, suggesting that this may not last long, and after the meal, calm and thoughtful quiet remains around. During rest, the white serpent thoughtfully reflects on its growth and gained experience, feeling that recently progress has become slower than before. Reviewing its status, it bitterly realizes the level limit has been reached. Overall stats are solid, but no new skills or resilience have been gained. This moment seems to stop growth and turns the gaze to understanding its current limits. After the bath, the mood becomes a bit awkward but light. The white serpent feels that something is wrong, begins to think about changes in the body, understands that it has gained enough mass to recover and properly fix information. It reconsiders its ability to sense, realizing that now it analyzes composition and form, not just catches sensations. But when trying to explain this transition, the moment breaks and both remain slightly confused and interested. Returning, Tenda tells about her experience, and at home she is warmly welcomed. He quickly explains that they dug up living comrades previously thought dead in Garrett's mine. This discovery confirms that everything is much more complicated than expected, and that the group's losses were not as final as they seemed. Nintendo confirms that he was there and acknowledges what happened. Relief is visible on his face. He survived, but it is clear how deeply he was shaken by how close death was. At the same time, he understands well, surviving is not the end. The problems have not disappeared and many things are still unresolved. Tenda said that he tracked down the slave traders on his own and explained that everyone was hidden by Reik-sama. The situation turned out to be much more serious than they thought. A real threat of an attack on the village, so finding out everything about the enemy became a priority. Despite the tension, the report is perceived as positive, and the white snake instantly senses the mood and true intentions hidden in Tenda's words. Suddenly, a messenger runs in and, out of breath, shouts urgent news. The slave trader is standing at the castle gate and waiting for an audience with Sir Reichai. The room froze in shock, and the white snake and Tenda reacted instantly when it became clear how serious everything was. The messenger is allowed to enter, and everyone understands the matter is serious. Tenda decides to take the matter into his own hands and asks Oren to stay nearby just in case. Oren was suddenly involved. He is stunned but remains cautious. The white snake reacted with surprise, and everyone prepares for what might happen next. Oran is asked to check the scroll hanging behind the room, and suddenly a secret passage opens. This showed the castle was built with fortifications in case of a sudden clash. Tenda admits that he acted too hastily and realized it too late. The defensive measures were always here, and the white snake quietly observes the hidden mechanism. After a long wait, a man with a rough appearance arrives at the castle, clearly irritated and impatient. He is brought inside expecting special treatment, but instead receives only a simple cushion on the floor. He reluctantly sits down, and with each passing minute, irritation grows, filling the air with tension as he faces the people already waiting inside, while the group in the hall greets the visitor calmly and reservedly. The old man, though somewhat rough, still offers hospitality. He watches the man intently, making it clear this is not a chance encounter, and the man himself, irritated and indifferent to this atmosphere, becomes impatient and openly shows hostility, indicating that he came not out of courtesy but with a specific purpose. The guest finally revealed his cards. He directly stated that he came to take slaves from the village. His words stunned everyone present, and the air in the room became tense. The elder and others immediately understood before them was an enemy, not a negotiator. Tension rises as his threat becomes explicit. The elder instantly rejects the demand calmly but decisively, making it clear that there is no benefit from cooperation, and he categorically refuses. The air was filled with irritation. The tension in the room intensified. It became clear that the negotiations had completely broken down. The slave trader retreats, mocking the decision and leaving behind open hostility. As soon as he leaves, the old man feels something is deeply wrong and immediately calls an urgent meeting. A strange pressure in the air troubles everyone, as if warning, these are no longer simple negotiations, it is time to act quickly. The group confirms the identity of the slave trader and the chronology of events. The elder realized that the attack happened immediately after the slave trader's arrival. The danger was close. There was almost no time left, so they rushed to prepare swiftly and set a deadline of a few days before taking action. They review the map and suddenly understand. The travel time does not add up, so the enemy used some secret passage or hidden trick. It seems the slave trader expected resistance and had already stationed soldiers near the village. There was no time to call for reinforcements. They understood the attack was inevitable, so they prepared to act immediately, most likely by the next evening. The elder decided that the enemy would attack soon, so he would act quietly to avoid alerting the enemy, first warning the village and putting everyone on guard. Or agreeing, placing the protection of people above all, even if it means preparing for the inevitable conflict. News came, someone from our village survived and is now held in slavery in the kingdom of Galaudet, and this truth stunned the entire group. The elder begs restraint, warning that haste could ignite a wider war. Or is still struggling with the choice but agrees to wait until everything settles before taking a step. Or someone insists that their priority is to help those allies who once saved them, even if abandoning the village will provoke anger, after weighing the risks. The elder agrees and decides to send reinforcements instead of going personally, and the atmosphere lightens. They see determination and strength in their comrades, and trust and unity among them grow stronger. The group reached a clear decision when everyone agreed. The elder gave the signal to act immediately, and the tension turned into resolve. Without delay, preparing to move, everything happens swiftly. Tenda and Reiki line up soldiers along the practiced route, and messengers are already departing from the castle. In the town, Sim and Jade bustle with the women around food and supplies, while Orin does what he can, hauling sacks and drawing water from the well as the sun sets. The next day began tensely. The castle was fully mobilized, rows of soldiers in armor lined up near the walls, flags raised, and all focused on the looming fortress ahead. The army stands at full readiness, signaling that preparations are complete and the plan is underway. Reiki realizes the operation started faster than he expected, even earlier than planned. As the situation unfolds, tension rises, and even the white snake feels the circle tightening, as if they have already been cornered. From above, two silent silhouettes gaze into the city, sensing its scale, and one of them watches the crowd in armor and quickly estimates their number. On the stage, thousands of soldiers are visible, and from this, one feels how large-scale and serious the situation has become. The group studies the situation and quickly realizes a difficult task awaits them ahead. The defense is cunning, numerous gates and scattered forces that allow free maneuvering. A simple frontal assault would be too risky. As they survey the deployment, it becomes clear, one careless step and they will be surrounded, so every move must be thought out very carefully. Looking at the enemy's flag, they recognized the army commander and understood he is far from ordinary. The scale of forces clearly shows this siege is no joke, but still people harbor doubts about the true skill of the commander. Rumors paint him as a failure, and the contrast between his reputation and the situation makes the threat uncertain but still dangerous. Piecing together clues, they noticed a connection between the kingdom of Herat and a slave trader and realized that the matter was much more serious than they initially thought. Personal feelings are set aside when all attention shifts to strategy. Before the enemy has made a move, they decide to act according to plan and maintain the siege, using this pause to their advantage and closely watching for any sudden changes. The soldiers caught a suspicious man who was wandering near the village. He is instantly recognized the very same slave trader from the past. It becomes clear that he has changed status and now calls himself an envoy of the Kingdom of Herat, despite his excuses. Tension rises, his presence reveals hostile intentions, and the leader does not believe that a simple envoy is acting alone. He suspects that a broader attack may already be underway. Under pressure, the captive finally speaks the truth, confirming that the Kingdom of Garrett is directly involved. With this confession, his value simply melted away. The leader calmly decides that he is no longer needed. The younger companion instantly reacted and interrupted him before he could utter another word. The young fighter steps forward and releases his power in one move. His strike fell with stunning force, the ground shook, and the captive instantly fell silent. The attack was decisive. Now there is no doubt the situation has escalated into open conflict. The man driven to the edge panics and finally surrenders, as strange vibrations spread throughout the area. The leader demands an answer without any patience, and under the pressure of genuine fear, he begins to tell everything he knows about the Kingdom of Garrett and its ties to the slave trade, realizing that his life depends on how quickly he reveals everything. Under interrogation, the man admits, the kingdom did not openly support the slave hunters but condoned their actions. Unrest is already spreading among the people, fueled by hidden forces within the country, and the group understands that only one spark is needed and this tension will explode into open chaos, using popular anger as a weapon. The captive admits that he was prepared from the very beginning and would have been killed if they had not tried to interrogate him, while outside soldiers are approaching. It turned out that his motives were selfish and frivolous. The truth angered the young leader. He demands to know how many villages have been destroyed because of this scheme and clearly states that a war built on lies and distrust leads only to destruction. Having given all the information he had, the man begs to be released. The young fighter steps forward without hesitation and clearly makes it understood that mercy was never promised to him. With cold, icy determination, he delivers the final blow and immediately nullifies the threat. A sudden jolt shook the outskirts. Catching everyone by surprise and realizing that the danger was far from over, the group understands survival is no longer guaranteed. In an instant, the young fighter rushed forward at full speed, closing the distance before the enemy could react. This was the beginning of a direct and deadly clash. He gave himself fully to the fight, activated a powerful skill, and thrust his fortified arm forward. The strike hit cleanly and decisively, knocking the opponent down with a single blow. This attack ended the threat, leaving no chance for resistance or escape. The blow struck directly at the head and explosively threw the man backward. He flew through the air and crashed with a roar into a distant building, tearing him apart at the moment of impact. When he hits the ground, the fight is already decided. The senior warrior watches intently and warns not to underestimate the human opponent. The young fighter bursts forward, and his strike, fueled by the anger of the entire village, still has tremendous power. It throws the enemy hundreds of meters away, clearly showing how stunning this might is. After a few hours, the group gathers again to analyze the situation, and here is the news. The envoys of the third prince have already set out, and everything is happening faster than expected. Though they briefly regretted their previous actions, they accept the reality of war and move forward without any hesitation. A new messenger appeared at the door, properly introduced. He arrived from the third prince of the Kingdom of Herat, and his official manner and appearance clearly say, this is a genuine diplomatic visit. After confirming identities, the group feels, this is the first real attempt to negotiate. The messenger insists that there was no attack plan, but his assurances quickly fall apart. The Lord of Demons throws the truth in the face. The previous messenger was a slave trader, and suddenly it becomes clear how much was hidden even from the highest vassals. It becomes clear that everything here is built on deception and weak control of the kingdom. The envoy, step by step, pieces together the picture of events and finally understands why the first messenger seemed unfamiliar. The same man appeared again and again, each time changing roles and acting without permission. The Lord of Demons explains that such reckless behavior make them answer harshly. Let it be clear that everything escalated only because of that man's actions. The envoy explains that the village was summoned only after reports confirmed enemy troops had already moved. Even without an official declaration, signs of war were obvious. Thanks to experience from previous slave raids, they immediately recognized the pattern and managed to prepare so as not to be caught off guard. The conversation boiled down to numbers and intentions, and soon it became clear the attack was never real. because the gathered forces were too small to challenge the castle. This situation exposed poor calculation and reckless troop maneuvers, clearly showing that the kingdom acted without awareness and without any plan. The female envoy offers to take responsibility and give her life, but the Lord Demon dismissed this idea. To end the conflict, the head of the Supreme Commander is needed, not a symbolic sacrifice. After a short pause, she accepts the logic and agrees to take on the task herself because she sees no one more suitable. Suddenly, a new figure steps forward and solemnly declares himself the third prince of the kingdom of Garot. His sudden appearance shocks everyone present and instantly changes the course of the conversation. And when it becomes known who he is, the situation escalates into a direct confrontation between the leaders. The prince extends an object with the royal emblem, a proof of his identity that dispels all doubts. The sign is immediately recognized as something only the royal family can possess, and with this gesture his status is confirmed. The tension in the room changes, and every word he now speaks resonates with undeniable authority. With proof in hand, everyone understood. This is not a game. Even without money and ceremonies, he is a real prince. The demon lord notices him and pushes the conversation forward, directly asking what exactly he came to seek. The prince clearly announces his intention and offers himself to put an end to the conflict. From his words, it becomes clear he already knows where the mistake is. The proposal stuns everyone present, and the negotiations turn into the moment when the war can truly be decided by a single choice. The prince reveals the truth. He already knew about the slave traders and admits that the kingdom is to blame. The knights are stunned because they realize they were deceived from the very beginning. When the truth comes out, it becomes clear. Even the king knew, and now the loyalty and innocence of all involved are in doubt. The mood suddenly darkens when the knights realize something is wrong. Orders are given hastily, and the troops are already moving. The prince is silent, as if it knows in advance how this pattern will end. It repeats what the slave trader did before, and the tension clearly shows that events are getting out of control. The prince finally explains that he tried to stop the war, but he was cornered. The king took his wife and child hostage, and he had no choice but to comply. Memory breaks him. It becomes clear that this conflict was imposed on him through fear and control, not ambitions. The prince explained that taking a hostage was the only way to prevent the troops from occupying their positions. He himself took full responsibility, choosing restraint over violence. Torn between the desire to protect his family and saving the innocent, he admits his decision was selfish, but it was driven by the desire to stop the war without shedding more blood. The prince kneels and voluntarily gives his life to end the conflict. He accepts the sentence without resistance, believing that his sacrifice will protect his family and stop further bloodshed. The room fell silent. Everyone understood how serious and final his decision was. The white snake pondered responsibility and realized, taking everything into one's own hands does not always mean sacrificing one's life. Once it lived in peace, so now it knows the fear behind that choice and rejects it, seeing the prince's determination. It admits that it respects his honesty and doubts whether such broken kingdoms can move forward without people like him. The demon lord knows that the prince's death would be enough to end the war. He announced that as the lord of the former village Oni, he would personally carry out the execution, and this decision stunned everyone present. A moment of negotiation turned into an irreversible sentence. Silence fills the room as the weight of the decision settles. The fighters lower their heads, unable to intervene. Shock and helplessness spread among the spectators. Everyone understands that no one can stop what is about to happen. When the blade was already raised for a strike, the white snake suddenly lunged forward. It coils around the demon lord and stops the sword mid-swing. Deciding on its own, it forces him to stop, saving him from killing and breaking the tense silence at the last moment. The white snake with its last strength restrains the demon lord, shocked by his colossal power, and even bound he stands unshaken. This clearly shows how truly powerful demons are. The clash proves stopping him by force is impossible. The chains instantly break and the demon lord easily breaks free. The white snake was stunned. Its reaction makes it clear that trying to stop him by force was a mistake, and the danger in the room instantly escalated. In a sudden burst of cruelty, the demon lord strikes first, grabs the prince by the face and lifts him with crushing force. The room froze at the moment of the strike. Everyone stood stunned. The knights were dumbfounded, only watching, realizing they were powerless to intervene as events spiraled out of control. The demon lord explodes with rage and exposes the prince's weakness, loudly declaring that a ruler who doubts his people and sacrifices his commanders cannot lead the nation. Shaken and bleeding, the prince is forced to face the reality of his choices as the weight of power crashes down on him. The prince cannot endure. He is torn between saving his family and the desire to end the bloodshed, and the demon lord sees in his anger proof that he truly cares for his people. Meanwhile, the white snake clearly sees the dead end and knows hesitation is as dangerous as a wrong choice. While there is no clear answer, tension hangs in the air and everyone is scrambling to find a way out. The demon lord once again launched an attack, ignoring the cries around him. The knights rushed forward to block his path and protect the prince at any cost, the prince burdened by guilt. He believes he no longer deserves their loyalty, but the guards do not retreat. The room explodes with chaos, and everyone rushes to prevent a tragedy. One of the night guards steps forward and takes responsibility, openly admitting his guilt. He proclaims his loyalty to the prince without hesitation, and the others follow him. Their determination changes the mood. They beg the prince to stay alive and lead the kingdom of Garrett forward, showing that he is not alone after all. The demon lord tests the knight's loyalty. Is it true devotion or just blind obedience? One vassal steps forward, proof that the prince is not alone, showing calm judgment and trust. Surrounded by allies who followed him voluntarily, the prince begins to understand that he has people who will support and guide him even in his weakest moments. The prince finally came to terms with what happened. He admits that he was quick to judge alone and did not notice the loyalty that was nearby. Surrounded by loyal vassals, he finally exhales. The conflict ended without new bloodshed, trust was restored, the crisis subsided, and everyone moves forward together. When the tension eased, the prince sincerely apologized for his selfish actions and asked to calmly discuss the future, and the demon lord agreed, saying that this understanding was what he had sought from the very beginning. When everyone calms down, anger finally fades, the conversation shifts from conflict to cooperation. This is the true end of the crisis. When negotiations become serious, the bitter truth emerges. Not only hostages were taken, but also the families of the prince's vassals. Overcome with guilt, the prince sincerely apologizes for dragging everyone into this crisis. The weight of the situation finally makes itself known. Even immense power leads only to destruction and leaves everyone in the same danger. Suddenly, the demon lord bursts out laughing, breaking the oppressive mood. He brushes off the tension and changes his tone, indicating that there is still a practical way forward. With a sharp gesture, he hints at a solution that avoids destruction and instead shifts attention to reconstruction. Chaos erupts outside. The gathered troops suddenly scatter, soldiers collide with each other, stumble and run away, unable to maintain formation, and what was supposed to be a controlled military presence quickly turns into complete confusion. This shows that the situation on the ground is already collapsing. The battlefield instantly becomes one-sided. Although they outnumbered, the army was trampled, soldiers are thrown aside, formations fall apart. Rumors spread they have huge losses, while the enemies remain intact, and it becomes clear that the numbers themselves mean nothing against the overwhelming power of the demons. Demons casually walk across the battlefield as if it were a game, while fallen soldiers lie around. Morale is utterly broken. One demon smiles and mocks everything, implying that this stunning display of power is an easy walk for him and not serious at all. The demon strikes as if it is nothing, breaking armor and throwing bodies into the air. Around them, soldiers are thrown back by a furious force. They are helpless, while others only sit and watch from afar because the difference in strength painfully catches the eye. Demons effortlessly continue to press on the battlefield, tossing soldiers in armor as if they weigh nothing, and their brute strength stuns the spectators. The ordinary army is powerless against this, and the longer the fight lasts, the more noticeable the chasm between the sides becomes. Another demon bursts into the fight. The water under his control seems to come alive. Ladies and soldiers are swept away by a wave of smooth strikes that glide freely across the battlefield, and it is clear the demon's power is not only in his body, but at the same time so skillful and precise that resistance seemed completely futile. Watching the battlefield turn into a field of blades, the observers can barely comprehend what they see. The scale of destruction makes any counterplan pointless. Calmly, the Lord of Demons explains that it is precisely this gap in strength and experience that allows them to speak so casually now, while the human side stands stunned and silent. The Lord of Demons unexpectedly proposes a strange solution to turn the conflict into a fictitious war. By arranging a conditional staged battle without real weapons, the fights can be stopped so that no one loses face. This idea turns external chaos into a performance and gives soldiers and civilians a chance to avoid senseless bloodshed. The plan is clearly laid out, leaving traces of battle behind. Everything is done so that the hostages are not harmed. Both sides retreated without further bloodshed, sparing both soldiers and civilians. What seemed impossible was resolved with one move, leaving the prince with the realization that all his fears were resolved by one balanced decision. When the crisis subsided, the prince silently sighed and admitted, "I was wrong, I underestimated this situation." The group realized that a direct fight was doomed to defeat. Instead, they had to acknowledge the power of the demon lord and his sharp mind. It was impressive not only how the fighters fought, but also how prepared the people themselves were. The outcome left both sides with a quiet but sincere feeling of respect. The demon lord gently explained that these peasants were not trained warriors, but ordinary people accustomed to moving only in daily labor. Then he reminded the prince that the true goal of this fake war was not victory, but the exposure and removal of corruption from the kingdom. The prince understood. Understanding that the conflict was meant to push for internal changes, not just to destroy everything at once, the final conditions were clearly established. The forces split, some stayed behind pretending to be prisoners, while others returned home with proof of defeat. The fake war ended without casualties, buying time and exposing vile deeds without resorting to open destruction. When everything is decided, the agreement becomes the quiet finale of the conflict. When the plan is decided, the fictitious war is officially ended. The exhausted fighters are told to rest, the tension on the field finally eases, and as everything calms down, the group returns to the usual rhythm, a sign that the crisis has passed and life can resume. After the fake war, peace finally returned to the village, and Adel sat alone, deep in thought, replaying in his mind over and over everything that had happened. A friend approaches to check on him, and it is clear he is still sorting through doubts and other voices in his head, but the moment has become lighter. Instead of struggle, reflection has come. The flow finally admits what had long been on his soul. He believes he has the strength and determination to overthrow the current royal power of Gallo, though he is ashamed to say it aloud. His whole life seems to have been decided for him, molded by fear and expectations he never chose. He remembers how his father and brother looked down on him and called him a coward who could not move forward. This stigma lodged in him, and since then has fueled his childhood habit of overthinking everything. Now, looking back, he sees clearly. This is not just about power or politics, it is about breaking out of the role he was forced into and choosing his own path. Adel recalls his decisions as a ruler and painfully realizes that postponed decisions and poor governance exhausted resources and plunged people into suffering. Responsibility was neglected, power was abused. False rumors spread throughout the kingdom and pushed him into unnecessary conflict. He recognized in himself the cowardice hiding behind avoidance of direct action and admitted that these failures only worsened the situation. Accepting this, he understood. True responsibility is to look your mistakes straight in the eye and act before the damage becomes irreversible. Aphel struggles with his weakness and suddenly realizes that he has never acted of his own will. He sees that he did not say what he wanted, relied too much on others, and allowed pressure to decide for him. Memories of his father and the weight of authority restrain him, but this moment finally forces him to face his doubts. For the first time, he decides to move forward himself and takes on the burden that comes with it. Adel explains his simple vision: to strengthen the country, increase harvests, make people wealthier, and let this prosperity support the nation. He honestly says that progress takes time and that any leadership always leaves someone behind. Although doubts and blurred memories of his past life did not let him go, he still accepted. Opposing influential people is never easy. Yet he believes that Adel has the determination to bear this burden and move forward. They say to Adel that only he is capable of opposing the current leadership. They note that the recent success is only temporary luck, and the same confrontation will repeat if nothing changes. Realizing this, Aphil considers taking responsibility himself and changing the kingdom's fate before another war breaks out. Aphel says that he lacks confidence, but the people around see in him a quite worthy ruler. Their trust inspires him. He decides to move forward, not running away, step by step, facing the future, not giving up. Aphel thanks others for helping him find determination, although he downplays his importance. He believes that the change of power will calm the slave hunts and finally allow this land to live in peace. Encouraged by this result, he remains optimistic and accepts that everyone around will support him on the way forward. Aphel is surprised at how quickly others accepted his decision, but instead of pressure, he feels relief. The promise of support encourages him. He begins to imagine a future where Garrot can be saved and ruled more justly. Hearing each other, he gathers strength and accepts their help, preparing to move forward as one who will change the country. The next day, Aphel stepped before the gathered troops and announced the end of the conflict. The village behind, the army in ranks, he orders everyone to return home. The soldiers silently obey, and the long tension finally breaks as the false war clearly ends. Full gathered comrades led them in retreat and sharply ordered to march without causing trouble on the way. When the situation was resolved and the decision made, the group together leaves this once united village and heads back to the kingdom. The false war finally officially ends. The army sets off through the forest in a slender, confident formation. They march home. Supplies are loaded onto carts and the long caravan slowly disappears down the road. The white snake, traveling with the baggage, feels awkward and out of place, squeezed among the sacks. It resigns itself to this as inevitable and continues the journey that night. The group rests along the forest road, moving together in a light, measured rhythm. The snake quietly watches the others, admiring their agility. Later they gather for a simple meal. The mood becomes lively, but sometimes someone sternly restrains the merriment, reminding everyone to be cautious. The group settles for the night, knowing they will set off again in the morning, but the night bursts with noise and carefreeness. They eat and drink together, laugh and push each other. The mood is rough but warm, and everyone finally releases the tension after the false war. While the others enjoy the moment, the snake quietly thinks about the soldiers of Herat and feels a bit guilty. And nearby, the exhausted troops rest in the forest, drained but finally able to sleep after everything that happened. Later that night, the group sat quietly by the camp. Under the moonlight, the mood became calmer. After everyone was thanked and everything was finished, Apple asks to dispel one last worry about the war. He wants to make sure if the kingdom of Herat really sent 1,000 soldiers to the village. When the answer comes uncertainly, it becomes clear. Key information is missing and the situation is not as simple as it seemed at first. Adel plunges into memories of family. Before his eyes appears his father, once respected and considered skilled. Over time, the duty to govern the country fell on his shoulders. It was a legacy passed down through generations of his uncle. However, instead of strengthening the country, the current leadership began to abuse power, siphoning off people's taxes for their own luxury. What once was meant to protect the kingdom slowly turned into corruption and extravagance. Apple says that he had 3 brothers. The eldest took the throne and ruled as he pleased, while the second brother was sickly but reliable. Apple himself remained outside of power in the very kingdom of God. Power concentrated in the hands of corrupt nobles and their subordinates, although among them there were still decent people. Adel says that Reiki enjoys the respect of the people and is trusted as the lord of the castle, and emphasizes that Balto and other vassals are under heavy pressure. Especially Reiki, who bears the heaviest burden, but Aflo remains confident and reassures him, treating Reiki in a friendly, not formal manner. Adel recalled Reiki's father and said that he died during the war. Reiki explained that his father once took part in a revolutionary conflict decades ago. Meanwhile, under the command of a mercenary general, the castle was being rebuilt, and the war dragged on without a clear end. Eventually, Reichi's father hid the truth, pretended to be dead, and withdrew from public life. It is clear that what he saw and did exhausted him. Reiki begins to explain the Revolutionary War. He recalls that it was a conflict between humans and half-humans, beings who looked like humans but were treated as something else. This word was used to separate them and strip them of their humanity, turning that difference into a cause for fear and conflict. Ricky says that once people in several countries were oppressed and made slaves, and those atrocities sowed a deep resentment, especially among the half-people who lived under the same yoke. Finally, they no longer endured it, and their resistance became the beginning of the Revolutionary War. Ricky explains that the war has been dragging on for 5 years because each side is strong in its own way. The half-people are strong in body and the people in magic. To close that gap, the people rushed and quickly built a key fortress that allowed them to defend themselves the moment massive reinforcements arrived. The scene shows how long experience and careful preparation kept the conflict at a stalemate, revealing why the war never found a clear end. The war ended when the half-people's army emerged victorious. They wrote and signed a declaration promising to end persecutions and give the half-people a place where they could live freely. The harsh decisions behind that victory became a legend. For the sake of success, they went all out. Now a fool recalls that past and realizes the bitter truth. Acting now may mean standing against one's own family and clan. Fool calmly accepts what is happening, and to ask for cooperation, not resort to force. Reikai silently listens, weighing this request. The tension eased when everything became clear. A fool said what he had to say, and for now that settled the matter. The group rests by the fire, agreeing to help as they can and move forward together. 3 days passed. The group approaches the gates of the kingdom. The city stands untouched and peaceful, without any signs of recent battles. When they enter, their movement draws all eyes. This is the beginning of the next stage of their plan. They arrive at the capital Herat and stop before the main gates. The guards recognize the prince and immediately begin to open the gates. When the group enters, Oren apologizes for the trouble, and the soldiers tense up the sense that this visit heralds a serious crisis about to unfold. It emerges in the field of view, towering over the city. One of them got so agitated he almost drew attention to himself, but quickly calmed down. Despite its size and Western architectural style, the city is strangely empty. People on the streets in simple clothes seem lifeless, and the capital has a lifeless atmosphere. Beyond the city walls sprawls the domain of Geralt, fading into the distance, and beyond the mountains lies the former settlement of demons. Guards are on alert, watching every move. Patrols work tirelessly, and amid the tension, one of them recalls past mistakes and understands here one cannot relax. Knowing that a mistake here could cost lives, the soldiers are released and sent to rest, and the athlete returns to the castle to report the result to the king. When he withdraws under guard, it becomes clear. The real struggle is just beginning. Ahead of him await political decisions that weigh more than the battlefield. The group was ordered to stay in the Surzernia residence and remain on alert until the situation becomes clear. Athel is preparing to act alone, planning to move quietly and find Sadala without attracting attention, after setting up a night camp. Raikai says that public opinion must be skillfully managed. He intends to spread a quiet rumor to change how people view demons, playing on fear and misunderstanding to his advantage. While Athel listens quietly and realizes that even the subtlest words can determine how people will react and prepare for what is to come. Raikai clearly lays out the plan, to send demons against Geralt to accuse and destroy the ogre village and to sow fear and unrest among the people. This fear is deliberately spread and deepened, pushing the situation toward open conflict. When Athel had already gone to fight on the front line, Rake did not wait. He went alone and fully committed to the next stage of their plan. Athel arrives at Geralt Castle and is led to the king in the huge throne hall. He stands and looks at the ruler sitting high above him. He feels that this meeting will decide the next step of the kingdom and place him right at the center of the future kingdom. The scene shows the official report being solemnly read in the royal palace. The knight who had just returned from battle stood before the ruler of the kingdom, Ryan Courtlet, and calmly but seriously gave a report on the situation. The king listened, although he already knew the summary, and hinted that the real truth of this so-called war had not yet come to light. From afar, another figure silently observed, heightening the tension in the room. Then the report was clearly stated: the kingdom had suffered defeat. The atmosphere settled into quiet acceptance, and the episode reached its conclusion. In the palace, the report sounded like a verdict: clear numbers and heavy consequences. Only a small detachment returned, confirming the scale of losses, and a noble openly criticized the decision to send thousands of soldiers to a small village, mockingly shifting the blame onto others. The king questioned this strategy, saying that a patient siege could have avoided this disaster. Under pressure, the accused noble froze and was unable to defend his actions. Responsibility for the defeat became obvious. The conversation turned to the reasons for the failed campaign. By royal order, the army was sent to demonstrate the kingdom's power, but defeat was inevitable from the very beginning. It turned out the enemy was a demon with colossal physical strength, who threw giant stones from the battlefield directly at the headquarters, and this explanation shocked the nobles. The operation was reckless and doomed long before it began. The explanation continues. The knight describes how the enemy attacked from afar, throwing stones that flew all the way to the rear, waiting for battle at a distance. The army deployed archers, but only the demon's power could crush an entire squad, so the troops were forced to retreat before they were completely annihilated. Hearing this, the king quietly resigns himself to the bitter truth, and the guilty nobleman remains stunned and speechless. Leaving the audience hall, the knight finally exhaled and released the tension he had been holding inside. He did not lower his vigilance. It was still too early to relax inside the castle. Walking the corridors, he pondered the consequences of the battle and decided that for now his relatives and families under his protection were safe. A little earlier, attention turns to a small creature illuminated by a strange light, and it suddenly begins to transform. What was initially a minor threat suddenly changes form, rapidly growing and becoming much more dangerous, turning into a fierce serpentine monster that can attack with shockwaves both at prey and structures. This sudden metamorphosis signifies the birth of a serious danger that must be urgently reported before it gets completely out of control. The evolved creature is fully revealed: a serpentine monster with sharp features and an abnormal body. Its status shows great physical and magical power and several destructive abilities focused on shockwaves, bones, stone, and earth control. A moment after the transformation, adventurers encountered it and restrained it, instantly assessing its size and strength despite its threatening appearance. They decided it could still be handled. Noticing its dangerous abilities and keeping them under control, the scene shifts to a quiet moment. The knight was ordered to remain on alert in the capital. Nearby, the evolved serpent suddenly reveals new abilities. It creates and controls deceptive copies to launch surprise attacks, and they were quickly assessed. It became clear they are deadly if the target does not notice them. Resistance has increased. Useful skills acquired. It's time to take on the next task. Find the thief and test how these new skills work together. The results of the experiment are visible as clear as day. Several skills merge into one and produce stronger effects: shock waves that disrupt movement, destroy internal organs, and break bones. When these abilities overlap, their power multiplies and simple strikes turn into devastating attacks. In addition, another skill allows the release of shattered stones and earth in an explosion. This clearly proves that the creature's combat potential has grown far beyond what it was initially. The creature becomes even more powerful. It creates barriers of compressed air, releases explosive gusts of wind, and uses techniques that penetrate defenses if its strength is high enough, and also gains the ability to restore its condition after defeating an enemy. Although these abilities are considered dangerous and ones that must be reported, they are practically not used in the city. The knight, walking the streets, realizes with every step that possessing such power only creates new problems for what lies ahead, and it all ends with the new abilities being recognized as too dangerous for free use within the city. When the knight was walking through the castle corridors, a call came from inside the palace. His brother Balto was calling him. He paused, gathered himself, and stepped forward to respond to the request. The knight receives the summons, and he is led deeper into the castle. He enters a dimly lit room where a young nobleman waits calmly. The air is tense because the light was deliberately dimmed, and everything seems ominous because of it. The nobleman reveals his true identity. He is Balto Kulit, the second son of the king and younger brother of Nachai, and with a confident smile he watches the events intently, as if saying that this meeting is much more important than it seems. After reviewing the newly acquired abilities, anxiety grows because what will happen if they are used in the city? Soon the athlete is called into a private room. He responds and finds himself face to face with the younger brother, Balto Kulit, the king's second son, who calmly greets him, darkens the room, and easily controls the atmosphere. He reassures Aphel, saying that the skills used during the secret meeting are already approved and under control. Balto, with a confident smile, explains that everything happening now is part of his plan. The athlete stepped back cautiously, fully aware that there was something more in this conversation. The conversation intensifies. Doubts arise in the air about what really happened on the battlefield. The warriors confirmed that the demons were pushed back, but only Adel knew the whole truth, and it became clear something important was hidden, so there were gaps in their report. Despite this, Aflo waved it off. Without his direct intervention, the true picture would have remained unclear to everyone else, and the meeting continued. The pressure gradually increased. One of the nobles admits that he has already interrogated others everywhere, the same vague answers hinting that information is being concealed. Feeling the tension, he presses further, closely watching the reaction of the athlete who is under scrutiny and cannot fight back. Aphel lowers his stance and retreats, feeling that the conversation has reached a dead end for now. The meeting continues, and Aphel learns. Others have already investigated this and reached the same conclusions. Suspicion grows, and the pressure pushes him toward reluctant acceptance. Conversation turns to the past, and the truth is revealed. The slave trader and his father are deeply involved in this chaos. Comparing the actions of both so far, it becomes clear. Trust is now more on Aphel's side than on his father's, especially considering the fragile state of the kingdom of Galad. The conversation reached a turning point. Adel was directly asked to support the rebellion. He was initially clearly surprised, but then agreed to help. This situation is presented as inevitable. The rebels are already in action, and the current king is considered incapable of ruling. She clearly implies that Adel is considered a better choice for leadership, and this decision is seen as a necessary step, not a reckless adventure. The situation quickly escalates, the rebellion plans take shape, and Adel is asked to lend his strength. He is already considered more worthy to rule than the current sick king. Discontent is spreading, the rebels are already in motion, and reports confirm the capital is still being combed sector by sector. Although Aflo continues to fight relentlessly on the front line and coordinates the defense, those nearby notice his exhaustion. Realizing that the pressure on him has reached a dangerous level, the conversation instantly changed because new information surfaced. Reports confirm the main figures involved in the slave trade have fled the country, and this further destabilized an already unstable situation. While investigations continue, fatigue gradually consumes those responsible. They have hardly rested for several days. The situation worsens when news arrives that the fugitives are escaping. An immediate order sounds to mobilize forces and pursue them before they disappear completely. The plan moves forward, the capital becomes increasingly restless, and meanwhile ATHLEE continues to fight in the castle. Reports confirm that rebels and traitors are already active. Patrolling the night streets, the Serpentine familiar continues the search, pushing through fatigue and frustration. Wandering through dark alleys and surveying the surroundings, it finally notices a cloaked figure behaving suspiciously. Observing from afar, the creature quietly realizes that this is the person it was looking for. The creature scents a trail and quietly follows two figures who met in the deep night. Noticing their suspicious actions, it instantly sets off in pursuit, understanding that this is a secret exchange. When the cloaked figure enters the neighboring house, the creature circles around, avoids the main entrance, and slips through a side door. Once inside, it cautiously begins to comb through the premises, trying to find the man it is tracking. The creature sneaks deeper into the house, where a tense conversation is taking place. One of the nobles admits that their ally, the slave trader, has been captured, and this jeopardizes their entire plan. Panic overtakes everyone as it becomes clear what the exposure has led to, and the conversation quickly shifts to how to limit the damage and survive further. An eavesdropping creature silently recognizes one of the men, Lad, the elder brother of the athlete, who is now directly involved in slave hunting. Eavesdropping, the creature understands that this meeting is connected to the slave trade, and piecing together the picture of what it has seen. It notices a young girl sitting silently in the room, bound and beaten, and quickly realizes in shock she is part of a report intended for Jilny, evidence of committed crimes. The situation is worse than we expected. The girl has slumped in the chair, unconscious and completely unresponsive. Sitting nearby, a man in a cloak began asking what she was doing here, because he did not understand what was expected of her, and the silence only dragged on. Doubt creeps into the conversation, as if hinting that not all present truly understand why she is here. The creature hidden nearby listens as the conversation grows darker. The girl is not just a victim, she is part of a much larger plan. One of the men confirms she is the daughter of a noble family, kept as a secret weapon for war. Her injuries alarm everyone, but the speaker insists he protected her. Yet the real motive becomes clear. If her identity is exposed, their operation risks falling apart. The conversation reveals the scale of this scheme. The man says that the Lord had two daughters, and one of them is exactly the girl sitting before them. The other has already been sent as a slave to a neighboring kingdom, and their plan is to use this to ignite a war, making the enslavement of a noble child the pretext. Both daughters have become pawns in foreign hands. The conspirators seek to provoke conflict from the kingdom of Garat, turning political intrigues into open war. The conspiracy is fully exposed. One of the nobles lays out a vile plan to use the two daughters Alina and Sadala as tools to ignite war, condemning them to slavery to provoke retaliation from the kingdom of Salatin. The goal is only conflict. The instigators intend to exploit the chaos for power and profit, using the war as a cover to expand the slave trade network and invade new lands. The entire essence of the plan is laid out without any hesitation, and one of the conspirators confirms that the first step is the murder of Lord Aspar. Then his daughters were separated. Sadalu was sent to Garat, and Alina was secretly taken away and made a slave in Salatana. Every step was carefully planned to push both kingdoms into conflict. The sinister strategy unfolds exactly as planned. The main schemer reveals another part of his game. He admits to killing Lord Aspar to initiate the plot, and arranged everything so that Alina was secretly transported to Salatana to be enslaved, while Sadalu was sent to Haran. The two sisters, turned into pawns in a foreign game, do not even suspect that they are fueling preparations for war, and so far everything is going exactly as intended. The next stage of the insidious plan is revealed. The aristocrat intends to continue pretending to be a slave trader in Salatana, using the noble girl Irina without revealing her true identity, and at the same time make her responsible for an attack on Asbel's territory, all to play both sides, provoke accusations and political outrage, hiding her lineage to avoid suspicion and accelerate the path to war. The secret conspirator in a cloak proudly lays out the further plan, fully aware of the consequences. The goal is to shift the blame onto the kingdom of Salatana, manipulating events and people, and hiding that the enslaved girl is the daughter of the very lord they targeted. He plans to incite outrage by pretending to be a slave trader to further escalate tensions. The creature that was eavesdropping, quietly piecing together the facts, realizes this plan is meant to ignite war at any cost. Sadalu was saved first not out of pity, but so that she remains a political weapon. Every move is calculated, war is no longer a risk, it is inevitable. Having received the final instructions, one of the cloaked figures leaves the room, leaving the girl alone. One of the remaining conspirators approaches her and gently pats her head, maintaining a calm and deliberate appearance. The observant creature quietly watches the scene, sensing a strange aftertaste in this sudden wave of affection, whether genuine care or part of a grand manipulation. It does not know. The room sinks into tense silence, and only a candle flickers in the darkness. When the room empties, the creature quietly slips inside to scout. The girl is silent and motionless, giving no response. While searching for clues, a folded piece of paper slips out of her clothing, and the curious creature picks it up and peers at the strange letters but cannot understand what is written. Yet this small discovery may become the key to understanding what she has been through or what lies ahead. The creature examines the note and suddenly begins to understand the handwriting, something it could not do before. Confused, it asks itself why it can now read characters from another world, and when the realization comes that Sadala and her sister were used from the very beginning, old defeats flash up. It recalls the urgency of the mission and the figure in the robe who controlled everything behind the scenes, and though shaken, it gathers its will and focuses on awakening Sadala, because now everything depends on what happens next. Left alone, the tiny creature approaches Sadala, who is still sitting quietly, notices something in her hand and gently nudges her. When she begins to move, a jewel falls before her eyes, which she instantly recognizes. Her eyes widen as she realizes it belonged to her mother, and this moment stirs something inside her, becoming the beginning of her return to consciousness. The jewel in her hand, Sadala begins to wake up. The creature uses its ability, helping her and directing healing power. A soft surge of magic fills the room, embracing Sadala with water and light, quickly healing her wounds and restoring strength. Delicate glowing water flowers burst around her, their healing magic mending the injuries. She is struck by the light and beauty, realizing that her wounds have completely disappeared. The creature proudly multiplies the flowers for effect, making the scene even brighter. Sadala, hearing relief and still stunned, greets the creature and marvels at the magic that just healed her. Feeling much better, she realizes that the creature healed her and sincerely thanks it. The creature stands ready, watching closely to ensure everything is fine. Her wounds have already healed. Sadala wants to go out but hesitates because she fears she will be scolded or punished for it. The creature encourages her, and together they prepare to return to Zernia and the others. The snake finished its treatment. Healing enveloped the girl as water and light swirled around her, and the room filled with flowers. When she sees that the wounds have completely healed, the girl admires the beauty around her with surprise and great joy, thanks the snake for the help, and feels relief and safety. The snake leads Sadala out of the house, and she still cannot understand was it real or not. She goes outside at night. Orin notices her and thinks with surprise, the girl is wandering at this hour. He questions her. Sadala explains that the snake brought her here. The girl sits quietly, tightly holding the healing creature to herself. Orin notices her outside at night and approaches, surprised that she is there with a real snake. She says that Lord Snake brought her, and Orin asks why the child is outside so late. The girl breathes a sigh of relief. She was saved, but barely stands as she is overwhelmed by the consequences of overused abilities. Sadala and the snake return to the room after being left alone. Sadala was tired, and the snake tried to comfort her when suddenly she noticed a sheet of paper on her lap. The snake looked but could not read what was written and stood confused, not knowing how to help Sadala. When everyone left, Sadala and the snake found themselves alone. She sits silently, confused and not knowing what to do next, notices a scrap of paper on her lap, seemingly very important, but cannot read it. The snake also cannot decipher the writing. Both are stuck and do not know how to help. Sadala and the others realize Rad is using Elena and others, leading them into the whirlpool of war. Ellie sighs with relief, sees that the snake is okay, and hugs her, rejoicing that she is better. The group gathers and Sadala rushes to the snake, clearly happy that she has recovered. The air becomes lighter as she sincerely thanks. When Sadala entered the room, she was immediately bombarded with questions. Who are you? She introduced herself and instantly recognized the white snake. Orin and company passionately discuss the jewel that once belonged to Sadala's mother. Suspicions grow when Orin realizes that this girl is the granddaughter of Lord Azubal, and wonders why he was so eager to save her. Sadala holds the snake close, and the scene ends with her being closely watched and the bond between her and the creature becoming completely obvious. Sadala is interrogated about her connection with Mr. Oren. She introduces herself, and the group learns that she is the daughter of Lord Azubal. Sadala holds a white serpent and tells how her sister met Mr. Serpent. And he does not understand why it was exactly her whom he was drawn to help. Journey is forced to rest after days without sleep. Suddenly, Tag bursts into the room, clearly in panic, and shouts, "Zernia!" The air instantly tenses. Everyone understands that something urgent has happened, and Oren demands to know what is going on. He is told that he has not slept for several days and must rest, but suddenly Tag bursts into the room and shouts that the plans have changed, so the operation will instead take place tomorrow. The news shocks everyone in the room, especially the White Serpent and other members of the group. After a tense series of events, Satellite and Tag met again in the office, and Oren was shocked to see that Satellites was safe and sound. Tag quickly informs everyone that the kidnapping of Lady Sadala and Lady Arena was ordered by Lord Rad, and the group realizes that the attack on Lord Azbal's territory and the involvement of slave traders were also organized by him. The truth emerges. Tension fills the room, and the soldiers and main heroes instantly discuss the consequences after Sadala's safe return. It turned out that Lord Red ordered the kidnapping of both Sadala and Arena, hiring slave traders to break into Lord Azbal's lands through this. Lady Sadala's disappearance sparked panic. The soldiers think that a war with the kingdom of Salatana was being prepared, and Red holds Arena as a trump card, forcing her to work as a slave. The investigation team is ready to set out for Salatana. Scouts are already on their way to the demon village at the front, and everyone is tensely preparing to act the next day, as there is little time left to prevent a new conflict. The guards keep everything secret to protect the royal family and not attract the king's attention. Their loyalty is to the royal family. Power is barely holding. The king and his son have lost all support. The alliance with the guards gives the rebels confidence. The narrator anxiously asks about Arena. Will she be given help? Her uncle says he cannot go yet and warns that both Arena and the country are under threat. Datla feels that they have done nothing wrong, but the air is tense. They need to be careful. Early in the morning, the guards are on duty. Soldiers in armor stand near the building. The scene shifts to a bustling market where people are bustling, preparing, and setting up stalls. Soon a crowd begins to gather in the open square. Everyone is drawn to the center because it seems as if something important is about to happen. The next morning, an important person is led through the streets under guard, attracting everyone's attention, and around there is a buzz. People and soldiers are bustling, preparing for a great event. The king and his son froze in shock at how much the claimant knows about their secrets. Enraged, he directly asks what they really think of people, implying that he sees through all their lies and cruelty, and both remain speechless and troubled. The king and the rat are accused of allowing slave traders to attack their lands and turn former demons into slaves to increase the number of miners in the mines, and now evidence of their involvement in slave hunting has been presented. The crowd declared these acts unforgivable, but Rad resists and rejects the accusations, saying it is just a bluff. Applause breaks out among the people, and the king stands embarrassed. He does not understand that the soldiers are sincerely welcomed. One of the commanders steps forward and openly says that he entered the front demon castle and told their lord everything, hoping to prevent new battles. The king and his advisor froze in amazement. It turned out that there were neither attacks nor victims from the so-called demon army. On the street, those soldiers who were already considered dead returned home safe and sound. The crowd erupted with joy. Rumors of war turned out to be lies. It was all part of Asel's plan, and his alliance with the demons brought relief. It turned out that the castle was never threatened. The king and his ally try to order the guards to seize the new leader and his companion. The new leader calmly apologizes for his brother's actions and tells the king to take responsibility. As soon as the guards move to carry out the order, the new leader suddenly attacks, releasing a fireball. Having caught everyone by surprise and prepared the stage for chaos in the throne room, Bart swiftly rushed to cover the eighth from the approaching fireball, covering her with his cloak and protecting her. The magical attack swept through the hall, but Bart holds the eighth close, resolutely striving to keep her safe from danger. Bart shields 8 from the attack. He guards her while chaos unfolds in the hall. Suddenly, water bursts from the wall and floods everything around. Strange water dragged the king. He is confused and struggling.